Good morning, everyone. Honorable Minister, representative of the Honorable Minister of Trade, Faba Jame, Chief Executive Officer of GAIPA, represented by Director of Finance, CBPJ, the Commonwealth Secretariat, consultants from the Tourism International, and all stakeholders here present. Thank you for joining us in this important validation today, National Export Strategy 2021-2025. Since time is not in our interest today, I just beg all of us to make best use of time that is given to everyone, to be short and precise in whatever deliberation that you are coming to. So before going further, may we take a minute and pray in our own way. Amen. May God guide us through this important validation. Hello, stakeholders. Today marks another important day in the history of GAIPA, as we are validating a very important document, the National Export Strategy 2021-2025. With the help of the Commonwealth Secretariat, they were able to provide funds for the drafting of this important document. And I have to singularly thank Kevin and Dr. Prun from the Tourism International for definitely doing a wonderful job in drafting this important document. National Export Strategy for the Gambia has come at a crucial time, a time when the Gambia needs it most, because looking at our exports, our export volumes are very down compared to our imports. And it is very, very important that this document came at the right time. Without going for, where's the program? Without going further, as I said, time is not on our side. Let me know. As I want to invite Mr. Lamin Gay, the Director of Business and Export Development at GAIPA, to come and deliver a welcoming remark. Thank you.
Can you allow CDPD to be online? Good morning, the representative of the Minister of Trade, Mr. Faba Jame, Director of Trade at the Ministry, representative of the Chief Executive Officer GAIPA, Mr. CDBK, the representative from the Commonwealth Secretariat, Ms. Yinka Bandele, and the consultants from Tourism Intelligence International. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I'm pleased to welcome you all to this two-day validation workshop of the Draft National Export Strategy 2021-2025 for today and tomorrow. Meanwhile, allow me to commend all of you for the active participation you have all demonstrated in the course of designing the National Export Strategy draft from the consultation stages to date with unrelenting efforts. You continue to uphold the spirit despite the challenges posed by COVID pandemic. We are and will forever be grateful. I must express gratitude to the Commonwealth Secretariat for the technical and financial assistance extended to GAIPA for the development of the new generation national export strategy. and by extension to the consultants from Tourism International, Intelligence International for coming up with a befitting draft NES. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the National Export Strategy 2021-2025 is designed as a practical tool for the Gambia to contribute to the Gambia's economic growth through enhanced trade competitiveness and performance. This is envisioned from the focus on harnessing the export potential in 6 priority areas as outlined in the draft National Export Strategy, in which the Gambia have a comparative advantage. The ultimate objective is to turn the tides over as a net importing country to a net exporter over a gradual pace. The focus 6 priority areas are namely tourism, manufacturing, groundnut, horticulture, cashew, and fisheries. The core sectors above will be offered strategic support by critical trade enabling sectors of trade facilitation and transportation, financial services, ICT, research and development, and human resource development. Meanwhile, you will agree with me that the importance of the strategy, strategic outputs, and motive behind sector prioritization cannot be overemphasized and are key to resource mobilization and delivery of results. By so doing, it ensures ownership and thus pave the way for successful implementation of programs and outputs under the NES. This will be strengthened further by the imperative to mainstream strategic outputs into annual, medium, and long-term sectoral work plans and budgets. Furthermore, it is crucial to pay attention to the timing and the launching of the strategy to coincide with the beginning of the financial year. Reason being to allow sufficient time for harmonizing the strategic outputs into our programs from the next financial year. Equally important is to put in place clear, workable institutional arrangements and delivery mechanisms for the efficient and effective coordination of the strategy implementation. Under this arrangement, I will take this opportunity to reiterate to the Commonwealth Secretariat to strongly consider institutional strengthening and human capacity building for key implementing partners to support the strategy delivery process. On a final note, I thank you all. I thank all of you who have directly or indirectly participated one way or the other. I commend my team for the steadfast support throughout this process and the entire staff body at GAIPA for the unreserved support they continue to render in this process. I wish you all a very successful validation workshop. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gay, for the short and precise welcoming remark. May I use this opportunity to call on the representative of the Chief Executive Officer of GAIPA, Mr. Sidi Bite, to give an overview of the National Export Strategy Project and its importance. Mr. Bite, the floor is yours. TDPT, are you with us? Yes, he just called me. Mr. Bite? Hello, Bite?
Hello? Hello? Hello?
Yes, Bite?
Hello? Yes, thank you. Okay, I am reading, good morning to everyone. I am reading this statement on behalf of the Chief Executive Officer of Gambia Investment and Export Promotion Agency, who is unavoidably not in office because of his health condition. And I take this opportunity to wish him a speedy recovery to join us and lead this institution. May I also take this opportunity at this difficult time to wish all those who are infected with the coronavirus a speedy recovery. So the statement, Honorable Minister, the Desk Officer of the Gambia, and the Commonwealth Secretariat, our esteemed consultant from the Tourism International, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, morning to everyone. I extend a welcome to you all on the two-day validation of the workshop on the new National Export Strategy 2021-2025. I would begin by expressing our gratitude to the Commonwealth Secretariat for the technical assistance extended to GAIPA for the development of the new National Export Strategy, and by extension to the consultant from Tourism International for coming up with a befitting draft of the NES document. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, today marks the beginning of another cycle in our drive towards enhanced export performance and competitiveness. It is a continuation of the journey that started way back in 2013 with the advent of the fourth generation National Export Strategy that elapsed in 2017. The timing cannot be better in that the new strategy is designed on the back of a well-developed national blueprint, including but not limited to the National Development Plan. A strong anchor and point of reference is those provided for the broadness of the NDP as an embodiment of the national development aspiration. The cross-cutting and far-reaching objective of the NDP and focus on trade development and reconnaissance of trade infrastructure, linkage with trade enabling sector will extensively aid the strategy output under the new National Export Strategy. The new strategy is anchored on the same objective of transforming the Gambia to a net exporting country. It was developed as a result of the stakeholder consultation, field visits, which constitute one-on-one interview with key stakeholders in both public and private sector. This was followed by a two-day strategy planning workshop that took place on February 24th and 22nd, 2020. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the National Export Strategy, the NES 2021-2025, is designed as a practical roadmap for the Gambia to achieve increased level of economic development by focusing its limited but valuable resources on developing export capacity in 6 priority sectors, for which the Gambia has greatest potential for export development. The National Export Strategy specific goals and expected targets are as follows: to build a strong, more responsible, robust and resilient economy, to diversify export market, to move the economy up the value chain through high value generating export activity, to improve the brand image of the Gambia in the international market, and to showcase the Gambia as a quality exporter for strategic products, to use export as a tool to alleviate poverty through high value job creation, to attract more foreign direct investment in the priority sector, to create more inclusive economy that invests in the values, human capacity, to drive resilience through a sound export strategy, to encourage and facilitate innovation. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the new National Export Strategy is envisaged as a critical roadmap to guide the Gambia towards export growth and diversification, recalibrating the economy away from its dependence on low value added commodity trade and helping Gambians business to enter global value chain. This second NES 2021-2025 focus on supporting the Gambia's export ready and export potentials farms to enter regional and global value chains, particularly in value addition, horticulture, agro processing, groundnut, cashew fisheries, light manufacturing and service, particularly tourism, to bring further benefits to the National Export Strategy, identify and analyze the value chain for the targeted sectors, as well as the sector's performance and competitive environment, and develop targeted and achievable strategy and actions that will grow the value, volume, and sustainability of export. Ladies and gentlemen, a number of challenges were highlighted during the progress review of the first NES, resource mobilization from a major attribute to this challenge, and of course remains a keystone for successful implementation of the strategy. We are about to validate yet again. You will agree with me that resource mobilization will be less of a burden if our priorities are better prioritized. Cross-sectoral strategy, harmonized, and sector ownership of strategic output strengthened. The new NES belongs to everyone. I emphasize, the new NES belongs to every sector of the government, and leadership is in the implementation must be owned by all sectors, particularly those identified as the priority sector. It is critical that the NES reflect an understanding of the need of the export market, its paying customer, and not just focus on addressing supply side issues, such as the high cost of electricity. The national export strategy should therefore not only be based on what the country wants to supply, known on improving their productivity, progress, and market access, but also critically reflect what the market are demanding. In addition, the establishment of a robust monitoring and evaluation structure incorporating key implementing and monitoring agency is needed to ensure a high success rate of the NES. Finally, I implore the Commonwealth Secretariat to strongly consider capacity building for the key implementing partners for the purpose of institutional strengthening, effective, efficient, and delivery sector, as it was highlighted by the Director of Export Department. On this note, I wish to recognize the unrelenting effort of the GAIPA team, especially the Export Development Department, particularly their steadiness to ensure that this day has come to be. I thank you all for your attention. Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you very much, Mr. CDPT, Director of Finance at GAIPA, who read that overview of the NES project on behalf of the Chief Executive Officer of GAIPA. On that note, we have a slight change in our program. Instead of the opening remark by the Honorable Minister, who is represented here by the Director of Industries, we want to move to the fifth agenda, that is challenges of Gambians exporters. This one will be delivered by the Chief Executive Officer of the Gambia Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Alu Seka. Mr. Alu Seka, are you with us?
Okay, I have assigned to all.
Good morning. Good morning, Mr. Seka.
Yes. I believe I should be starting my video now.
Yes, yes, you have. I'm seeing you, Mr. Seka.
Okay. Good morning to you all. Pleasure to join this forum. I'm particularly pleased to see that we have many participants. My role is to speak on the challenges of export in the Gambia. As a small economy, we lack diversification and are constrained by tiny internal markets. We face many barriers to growth, such as inadequate infrastructure, high unemployment, limited. The Gambia is also extremely vulnerable to external shocks due to our dependence on tourism and agriculture, which together make up some 40% of our GDP, with the majority of Gambians again depending on these sectors for their livelihood. However, increasingly, the services sector, which includes tourism, is proven to be the largest contributor to our economy. In particular, tourism and remittances are the main sources of foreign exchange for our economy. According to the World Bank, remittances contribute as much as about 20% of our GDP. The reality is that our agricultural sector is yet to be harnessed to its full potential, as more than half of our arable land is not cultivated. Fishing, horticulture, sesame, cashew nuts in particular, in priority sectors of our export diversification, still need to be mechanized and upgraded. In order to tackle this growing concern, there needs to be an improved business environment to increase private investments in the Gambia. Excuse me. According to the World Bank, the Gambia's trade deficit stood at $590 million as of 2018. The GCCI, together with partners, including Ministry of Trade, Industry and Employment, GAIPA, amongst others, continue to engage other government institutions to improve the business environment and to promote and increase private investment in the productive sectors of our economy, which of course have huge potentials. Also, due to the Gambia's proximity to major consumer markets in Europe and America, compared to many other African countries, we are also strategically positioned to be a trading hub. Notwithstanding, key challenges which affect our exports are poor regulatory environment and infrastructure, which has been confirmed by the World Bank Doing Business Report 2019, which unfortunately ranks us 155 out of 190 countries. I am sure most of the participants on this meeting are aware of this. The bureaucratic processes involved in registering a business, trading of goods through our borders, poor road networks, etc., all affect export business by causing delays and increased cost of export. Energy, as you all know as well, has been identified as one of the main challenges faced by businesses in the Gambia for as many years. With 99% of businesses in the MSME and the population depending on the national grid, the price of electricity per kilowatt in the Gambia is 20 cents, and power outages are common, which make it impossible to process, transform, mechanize, package our raw materials. Presently, as you will also realize and know, we are all having wasted days, not being productive, nor sleeping at night because there is not sufficient electricity in town. The issue of access to finance or the lack of appropriate financing structure, availability of credit, and the conducive environment continue to limit private investment in the Gambia as well. As you would also realize, huge domestic borrowing by the government in the past had crowded out private sector credit over the years, even though this had or is beginning to improve slightly. There is still much more need to radically overhaul this. Interest rates are also very high, and loans tend to be on a short-term basis, which do not favor long-term investments, as the case with export business. You also have to face the challenge of inadequate supply of technical skills in the labor market, which is an impediment for the export industry. Taxation with a multiple tax regime, high rates continue to affect the growth of the private sector. Again, the GCCI and partners from the government are currently working through the National Business Council to develop a simplified and improved tax system. And we're encouraged by the Honorable Minister's intervention and of course the GRA management. The issue or the need to adopt an integrated approach to a national export strategy cannot be overemphasized. Similarly, to link it to the overarching SDGs, such as ending poverty, gender equality, amongst others, plus our own national development plan, amongst others. Market access must be strengthened, including use of innovative distribution networks and the use of ICT. On this draft NES 2020 to 2025, Let me congratulate GAIPA and of course the export development team led by Mr. Gay, who continue to do a fantastic job together with his team. And I quote from the document that the NES is not a standalone initiative. Not only is it a continuation from the first NES, but also is integrated into current and planned initiatives in related sectors and institutions. In this regard, the NES is viewed as complementary to other strategies and needs to play a major role in incorporating and integrating other complementary strategies and actions, but also adding value to the competitiveness and sustainability of the Gambia's exporters, end of quote. Finally, our size must not shut us out from exporting to the world. Our transit and re-export trade proves that we can trade successfully. The top 4 countries, for example, that have the most trade in terms of percentage of GDP include small countries like Ireland, 220% trade volume, Singapore, 326% trade volume, Luxembourg, 391% trade volume, and Hong Kong, 400% trade volume. With the right policy fully implemented and strong political will, everything is possible. Our national export strategy can work for the Gambia. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Aliu Seka, Chief Executive Officer of the Gambia Chamber of Commerce and Industry, for that for that brilliant presentation that you have just done, and highlighting most of the challenges that the country underwent throughout exports. It is important to note that the Gambia, as a small country, is definitely difficult to challenge bigger countries in terms of export. But as you rightly said, the Gambia is strategically located within the sub-region, and therefore we stand a better chance in terms of exporting to other countries. Thank you for that important presentation. And next, we call on the Commonwealth Secretariat, Yinka Bandela, to give an overview of the NES. Yinka, are you with us?
I am. Thank you, Lamin.
Okay.
Good morning to everybody. I'm very happy to be here today representing the Commonwealth Secretariat as we move forward in the journey of the development of the Gambia's second national export strategy. I would like to offer warm regards in this good morning to the official representing the Minister of Trade this morning, Mr. Faba Jameh, Director of Trade, to our partners working on the development of the NES, leading this process at GAIPA, Mr. Sibi Bate, Director of Corporate Services, Mr. Lamingay, Director Business and Export Development, and Mr. Aliu Seka, the CEO of the Gambia Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Good morning to you. And of course, also officials from across government and development partners. And I would also like to offer another good morning to our Commonwealth consultants from TII, Dr. Oleana Poon and Mr. Kevin Wilson. So, as I said, I'm really happy to be here at this point in the journey of the development of the Gambia's national export strategy. And in a way, it's highly commendable that somehow we were able to do the initial scoping work for the national export strategy in February, just as all of the issues around COVID-19 were picking up steam, really in Asia and in Europe. But we managed to get that through. And that means that at least at this point, we're a little bit ahead, and this hasn't been a project that has been delayed as many others have been delayed over this period. I want to firstly commend those stakeholders who are with us here today, who have remained engaged throughout this process of introspection and analysis of the NES2, especially because this is a time of uncertainty, as I've already alluded to, with the consequences of COVID-19 pandemic. And of course, without your feedback in this process, we wouldn't be able to move further on in terms of developing a national export strategy, which will be fit for purpose for the Gambia. Before we get into the discussion of the NES, I do think it is important for us to factor in how COVID-19 pandemic may require an adjustment to the implementation of the NES going forward. As we know, the lockdown of economies around the world have had an unprecedented negative impact on the global economy. The IMF is estimating a global slowdown of output globally at around 3% during 2020. And similarly, the World Trade Organization is predicting a fall in world trade merchandise between 13 to 32% in 2020. And we know that the lockdown has had a direct effect on particular sectors of the economy, especially service sectors such as tourism, hospitality, entertainment, but it also affects global value chains, as we know, in terms of the movement of goods and the services embedded in them. So that could be as varied as electronics. And of course, many of us are aware of the challenges of ensuring that those that are treating COVID patients have the right equipment. So this issue has opened up many of the challenges which are embedded in globalization, and that's come to the fore and is now requiring more conversations about what do we mean when we say, you know, global value chains are highly important for global trade. The previous colleague from the chamber well alluded to the issues around what might impact the development of the SDGs and how we have to keep that at the forefront of what we're trying to achieve, as well as how that is embedded in our national development programs. And I just want to endorse that, especially at this time when we know that many of our economies are stretched and will be stretched and challenged at this time when the receipts from revenue are not being well received into government coffers. At the same time, we have to be aware that there is that potential silver lining, which has been advocated by environmentalists and of course, many mainstream actors around how this could be an opportunity for resetting what we think of as sustainable development and a green climate change response to how we reinvigorate our economies. So it's not to say that all is doom and gloom, but maybe there are opportunities and silver linings that we need to look at. But I do think it's important that we have at the forefront of our minds what adjustments are required, because for many of us that remember the impact of the global financial crisis of 2007-8 and what that had as an impact on all economies, but especially those small economies, you know, it took many years for some economies to come full circle back to their previous pre-global financial crisis levels, because that was a significant global shock to the economies. And we also know that COVID-19 is again that additional external shock to economies. So the flanking measures that will be required for those economies that are not well insulated, that are smaller economies, is really necessary at this time. So we're not looking at the NES in a vacuum, but we are trying to see what adjustments will be required so that the NES 2, as it is conceived as a gateway to export diversification, economic growth and sustainable development, can still happen for the Gambia. So that was just my small entry point. I'm just going to now summarize a few points around what we know of as the inherent characteristics of vulnerability to economies in terms of the narrow resource base, high exposure to external shocks and what can be done about that, low productive economy and limited economies of scale. We may be starting from that base, but with a national export strategy, the focus is to move the economy forward and away from that reality to an economy which is nimble, highly responsive to international trade dynamics and globally competitive, so that a small economy can pitch itself beyond its small size, as has already been articulated. But of course, to do so, it does require that transformation of vision, that national commitment to excellence, issues within the economy which are undermining productivity, but also undermining the movement of investments or the attraction of investments into key sectors of the economy. I won't overemphasize that because it has already been spoken to, and we will be discussing that going forward, but it is worth re-emphasizing and highlighting that point. The NEST 2, as we know, is an opportunity for Gambia to push its development agenda forward. We know that trade is an enabler to improve the competitiveness of the domestic market, even aside from what can be achieved in terms of trading into regional and global markets. We know that an economy that is outward facing, that is trade competitive, also results in stronger competitiveness at the domestic level. And that is really required for the Gambia to also have a good domestic internal market. So this is an opportunity for the economy the country, the government, to pay more attention to those issues around the ease of doing business, which has already been discussed. So I won't spend too much time on that, but it remains to be said that the ease of doing business focus also has dividends for the domestic economy, and that's an important factor as well. It's hoped that through this NEST process, the Gambia will end up with a well-oiled and implementable framework for the NEST, which will greatly improve the Gambia's chance of success when we come back to measure what has been achieved over the 5-year implementation period and beyond. And that's what we're trying to assist the Gambia to develop at this moment. The Gambia must continue to push forward and prepare key sectors to enter new markets and provide well-needed export support services at the institutional level, which will support those firms, producers and exporters to deliver competitive goods and services in a highly dynamic international market with sophisticated consumers. As practitioners at the policy, institutional and enterprise level come together over the next 2 days to discuss the NEST document and action plan in a truly collaborative public-private partnership approach in this forum, I'm really hopeful that we will be able to maintain our commitment to innovation and to ensure that the key groups find themselves reflected in this new approach going forward. I'll just take an opportunity to thank you again for your attention and to commend you for your commitment to this workshop process. I hope many of us will stay the course, and those of our colleagues or partners that we know haven't had an opportunity to attend today, that you will really encourage others to join us tomorrow. So yes, it just remains for me to say thank you very much, and I look forward to the 2 days ahead. Thank you.
I think we've lost
Alun, Mr. Gay. Mr. Gay. Oh.
Hey.
So do you want to take over, Kevin, Dr. Poon, because I think he may have.
Yes, okay, great. Well, I think, thank you very much, Yinka, representative from the Commonwealth Secretariat, on those remarks. I think next in the agenda, we'll move on to the presentations by Tourism Intelligence International, if I'm not mistaken.
You're done now. Yeah.
No,
You have
hello.
some.
Hello.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah.
Hello, Yinka.
Hello, you're back. Hello, Lamin.
Yes, I'm back. Carlos.
Right.
Oh, Carlos, sorry. Why are you trying to trick me now?
Okay, thank you very much for your message. Well noted, and we thank you. And on behalf of the government of the Gambia and GAIPA, we thank the Commonwealth Secretariat for being our good partners in coming up with this very, very important document. As you said, most of the stakeholders who are not here definitely will make sure that we call them today to come tomorrow. Most of them are coming late anyway, but I'm sure by tomorrow we'll get a better number. The final, next on the agenda, we're going to have an opening remark by the representative of the Ministry of Trade. The Director of Trade, Mr. Faba Jame, is here to deliver the opening remark on behalf of the Minister of Trade. Faba, the floor is yours.
Hello, good morning to you all. Hello. Good morning to you all. Okay. Good morning to you all. I want to express an apology on the fact that the Honorable Minister is or could not be able to attend this very important validation process being organized by the Gambia Investment Export Promotion Agency, GAIPA. But he has personally spoke to me to indicate his strong partnership with
business earpiece.
And the fact that we are all in this together, choice but to get a representative to provide an opening remark on his behalf. So we wish to apologize for him not being able to attend this very important forum. On this note, myself, Faba Jame, who is the Director of Industry, is going to make an opening statement and to declare the validation process open, so that at least we'll be able to see ourselves through these 2 days of the validation process. Notwithstanding, we want to acknowledge the support the Commonwealth is providing to the Gambia, particularly in the development of a national export strategy. And we also want to acknowledge the consultants who are behind the scene to this date that we are going to see a validation process to start and will end hopefully tomorrow. So we wish to thank the consultants. We wish to thank the Commonwealth Secretariat for supporting this cause. We wish to also acknowledge the CEO of GAIPA, the CEO of the Chamber of Commerce, the President of the Association of Gambian Manufacturers, for being part of this process, because we are all going to be a beneficiary of this document as we implement the strategy. And then we wish to acknowledge all other participants who have taken their time to be with us, particularly on the 2 days that have been identified. And we wish to thank them very much and then encourage them to stay on to ensure that we are able to do justice to the document so that it reflects every other sector that has been invited here and then becomes a national document to each and every one of us. The NES is indeed an important document that we cannot overemphasize. And it has come to a time when many economic processes are ongoing. Therefore, it will add into our basket of policies and strategies to ensure that we have a comprehensive framework of economic operation in the Gambia. We could be reminded that at the regional level, the ministry and its other stakeholders, we are working on the regional integration processes. And this includes some of the tools of the initiative, like the ETLS, like the CET. We hope that the NES should be able to serve as a medium to be able to fully participate in this regional initiative or integrative tools. Notwithstanding, at the continental level, we also are working closely with the AU on the AFCFTA, which is also another tool of integration, giving the Gambia an opportunity to access the greater market, even though of our size. So this is to show that to be able to fit in, to reposition ourselves in this integrative frameworks, we need to be able to put ourselves in that advantage position. And to do that, it would require us to look at our policies and strategies, which included the National Export Strategy, to be able to tap on the opportunities that we will find in the process of the integration of markets. So at the national level or at the ministry level, we are also working on the update, or we have even accomplished or completed some of the key policy documents which relates to industry investment, trade, employment, just so that we are able to fit in the current demand of economic processes. So today with the NES, in addition to the number of policies that we are updating, then we'll be able to see a comprehensive framework that the ministry and its stakeholders will be able to implement to see that it reflects on economic development in the Gambia. We also want to acknowledge other ministries' policy updates that are going to be supportive to the National Export Strategy, particularly the Ministry of Tourism. We have seen in recent times the impact of COVID on this sector. And then this will mean that we have to revisit our policies so that they are reflective of the realities of the COVID. And since we are now working on the NES, then we have an advantage to look at COVID vis-a-vis the NES to ensure that we are able to mainstream strategies that are going to work in advantage for us during this time of COVID. Of recent, we have also worked with GRA on the time release study. We thought and we believe that the time release study will help the NES because the time release studies has come to improve systems at the seaport and land borders for efficiency. The NDP is the national blueprint which has its own aspirations, and we believe it has included, or the NES has reflected, some of the provision or aspiration that we intend to achieve as a country. So therefore, the NES should lean on the NDP to ensure that it has that national phase, particularly at the time of its implementation. Now, we are obliged to make a paradigm shift in terms of our policies, in terms of our strategies, in terms of our operational modalities, for the obvious reasons of COVID and the obvious reasons of the nature of our economic prosperity. For a long time, the Gambia has been a country that is a net importer. And then this is not a situation that the ministry will celebrate. What we want to see is how to overturn, to change our strategies to ensure that we put more focus on export, just so that we'll be able to turn around the status quo of our international trade from a net importer moving towards an export-oriented led economy. And this cannot be done without the support of our partners in development, without the support of other relevant ministries and private sector, to ensure that collectively we should be able to come out with a strategy that is reflective, that is participatory, and that will make dividend for the entire economy. Now that we are in this era of globalization and the global value chain, we need to reposition ourselves to ensure that we participate fully and efficiently to ensure that we also become one of the countries that continues to supply its goods and services in the international market. We will want, particularly the consultant, to be reflective of the realities, to come up with an action plan in this document that will enable us, one, to mobilize resources for its implementation, and two, to create the capacities that will smoothen the implementation process to ensure that we are able to achieve the objective of the NES. On this note, we want to thank everyone that is in this forum and those who could not make it, to ensure that we are able to tap on the expertise so that this document becomes a rich document and a document that can be implemented as smoothly as possible. But all of this has to be done within a resource basket. So the resource mobilization strategy in the document should be very much effective so that at least to win, it will start with the resources that we will make out of this NES. So we want to thank once again the Commonwealth Secretariat for coming back to the Gambia and particularly supporting the NES formulation. And think that is a strategic move by the Commonwealth, and then the government of the Gambia stand ready to collaborate and partner, not only with Commonwealth Secretariat, but all other donor partners to ensure that we are able to move this country, this economy, to another height. Once again, I would want to thank the consultants for having done a great job for the Gambia. And then we wish to continue to collaborate with them, and we wish to reference them each time we have issues regarding the implementation process. So we want them to stand, to be on our side, on our advantage, to ensure that we have a successful implementation of the NES. On this note, on behalf of the minister, we want to declare the validation process open until tomorrow, when we'll witness the end or the closure of the validation process to be able to get a validated document. So once, I want to thank everybody and then wish that we will go through this validation process successfully to the end. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Papa Jame, the Director of Industries at the Ministry of Trade, for that good opening remarks. No doubt that Ministry of Trade, being our line ministry, will definitely work and help us implement this important strategy, 2021-2025. On that note, I would like to call on the consultants from the Tourism Intelligence International to deliver on their presentations. They have 3 presentations here to deliver. The first one is on global economic trends beyond COVID-19. The second one is key implementations for export development. And the third one is presentation on the draft national export strategy. So I hand over the baton to Dr. Poon and Kevin.
Good morning, all.
Are you with us?
Are you hearing me? Good morning, all.
Good morning.
And I'd like to say, well, thank you very much, Chair. I'd like to start off by thanking our gracious minister and his able representative, the Director of Trade, for his notes and for his welcome messages. And I would just like to emphasize that he asked us to make sure or to ensure that the NES is resilient post-COVID. He needs us also to look at the NES as a national blueprint, which is reflective of the aspirations of the Gambia, the aspirations in terms of what you want to achieve as a country, and to integrate it with a national development plan. He also spoke about the paradigm shift in policies and strategies and operational modus operandi to turn the Gambia from a net exporter into an agile exporter, and also to seek a more effective and efficient participation in the global value chains. We'd like to really thank him, especially for those comments that he has made. A special thank you also to Yinka from the Commonwealth Secretariat, to also imploring us to consider COVID, the change in global value change as well, the need to be nimble, agile, and to stay the course of innovation. And I'm hoping also Yinka and the Commonwealth Secretariat has heard the 3 calls for support to the Gambia in implementing the national export strategy. A special thank you also to our CEO of the Chamber of Commerce in terms of explaining the challenges of the business environment. He noted especially that we need to see the NES as an integrated document, and to achieve the key objectives of growing business, growing exports, growing employment, alleviating poverty, and perhaps most importantly, to move Gambia from 155 over 190 to maybe 100 or number 1 in the ease of doing business globally. I'd also especially like to thank the CEO of GAIPA, and I'd like to take this opportunity on behalf of our team to wish him every good wish for a speedy recovery. I would like to thank GAIPA and the GAIPA CEO for the brilliant overview of the NES. Not only have they looked at the progress, but also the process that we have been through. And finally, this whole idea that we are all in it together, and clearly we are all in it together. So with that, I'd like to start with our presentation, and I'd like to say to all, to the entire team, stakeholders, ladies, gentlemen, a pleasant good morning to you. It's a pleasure to be back in the Gambia, although remotely, but it's great to see all of you and to participate with you in an integrated process as we seek to finalize and validate your national export strategy. So thank you very much and good morning again. So in terms of what we'll be looking at today, we'll look at the global economic trends beyond COVID-19, the key implications for export development. We do the presentation on the draft national export strategy. Of course, we'd look for feedback, comments, and questions on the draft NES as well. And today we want to look at three key sectors, the River Gambia, tourism and fisheries, and of course tomorrow we will address the other sectors. So one of the first things we want to mention is that COVID-19 is the greatest opportunity of our lifetime. A lot of people are seeing the negatives of COVID-19, but quite frankly, the opportunity that COVID-19 provides us is an opportunity to rethink, to reinvent, to recalibrate, to reimagine, to do development more responsibly, to be resilient, as Yinka said, to be innovative, to have inclusive development, sustainable development, and also fair development and fair trade. So in terms of beyond COVID-19, one of the things we need to consider, go back a bit, Kevin, one of the things we need, one more. One of the things we need to consider is that COVID-19 accelerated pre-existing conditions. Now, all of you would know the concept of pre-existing conditions if you look at COVID. Next slide, Kevin. Pre-existing conditions. And some of these pre-existing conditions are, for example, you know, if you have diabetes or high blood pressure or anything like that, you are more susceptible. But the point we're making is that what COVID-19 is doing is accelerating these changes. Could you move one slide, Kevin? The one before. Okay, so the point is that COVID-19 is accelerating pre-existing conditions. And these pre-existing conditions that is accelerating, Kevin? Right. So the point we're making is that COVID-19 is accelerating what we consider to be the paradigm shift in the global economy. And I want you to remember what we consider to be this paradigm shift. And it's a radical shift in thinking where previously finance was the be-all and end-all of the economy of the world, followed by the economy, society, and planet. And the shift really is that today, the planet is the center of development, followed by society, and then the economy, and then finance. So that finance is no longer the be-all and end-all of our world economy. Now let's look at the factors again that are driving these changes. And there are 5 of them. One is the customers, the most important factor, they are driving change. The technologies, as we have seen, are facilitating change. The environment is limiting growth. Locals are much more demanding and countries are much more caring about the way in which development takes place. This is why the Sustainable Development Goals are so important. Now, what is the most important ingredient in a successful business? And I want to bring us back to our session in the Gambia. What is the most important ingredient in any successful business? It's 2 words, and I may tell you that these 2 words were mentioned in the presentation by the CEO of GAIPA. Can anybody tell me by raising their hands or typing in, what is the single most important ingredient in a successful business?
So there's a feature where you can click on participants and raise your hand, or you can, in the chat, you can type in your answer there as well. So those are the two options you have to communicate with us.
Can anybody tell us? What is the single most ingredient for successful business? And you remember this, right? Anybody remembers this? Who were there in the last meeting? And the discussion we had? What's the single most important ingredient in a successful business?
I don't think anybody, they're probably afraid to answer.
Yeah, all right. Well, let me answer it because you don't have much time. It's a paying customer, right?
Right, yes.
Yes.
Mansata answered, yes, correct.
Fantastic. It's a paying customer because you can do anything, but if someone is not buying your product, you're not in business. Okay, so I just wanted to remind us of that. So at the end of the day, it's not business as usual. Customers are the most important factor driving change. And how are these customers changing? Just let's take a quick look. In the past, customers were mass and standardized. Now they are more authentic and individual. They want things to reflect who they are. Customers in the past were carefree, and because of COVID, additionally, they are much more cautious. One of the things we find is that, unfortunately, COVID, we have had a fact that demographics are changing and people are getting older. And unfortunately, COVID is affecting the older people. And whereas people traveled before because there were lots of flights and they were carefree, we suspect that the older populations are going to be much more cautious about how and where they travel and how often they travel. They'll be very cautious about congregating and stuff like that. So we're seeing a slight change. In the past, customers wanted in the tourism sector, sun, sand, sea, and safari. And now they want to go beyond the beach. They want to explore culture and they want to do something more. And we need to be prepared for that. People were just superficially interested. People were not really interested in the Gambia or the Caribbean or anywhere. They just wanted to go and take up some sun. But I think more and more they want intensive experiences. They want to engage with you and engage with the culture. And in the past, a lot of tourism has been about short stays, but we're seeing a trend towards long, what we call co-working stays. And I want to mention that the Prime Minister of Barbados has just made a decision that anyone visiting the island of Barbados can get a visa for 1 year, which means that they can come and work and co-work and work from living in Barbados and working abroad. And I think it's one of the innovative ways in which we can think about how business can be developed for the future. In terms of how business customers are changing, in the past, people wanted to leave footprints in the sand. Now they're concerned about the ecological footprint. And the ecological footprint is about how much of CO2 you use in getting to your destination and what you do when you're there. So this is going to be very important. In the past, a lot of development was high impact, mass production, but now people want an intact environment. In fact, people want to go where no one else has been. The don't care attitude has given way to environmental activists. People are actually asking questions. How did you get there? How are you taking care of your CO2 footprint generally? And in addition to people used to be homogeneous that you can tell one from the other, but now they're very hybrid. We looked at some of these in the past. There was a lack of knowledge before. Now customers today are much more knowledgeable, much more educated than they were. They were accepting things as they were. Now they're demanding change. They were inexperienced and now they're sophisticated. Could you go a little quicker, Kevin? And now they're much more conscious in terms of where things are going. So these are our customers of the future. They are learning to do things. They want much more authentic experiences. They want authentic products. They want the real, the natural. And of course, there's River Gambia. They want things that are organic. So consumers are much more caring for the environment, and that's one of the major changes we've seen. We've seen Greenpeace is no longer rabble-rousers, but they're taking care of both. This is a whale in front of the German embassy in Berlin. People want much more caring, considerate, guilt-free holidays. People don't want to destroy the environment if they get there. And of course, we're developing this tourism in the context of a great deal of environmental destruction all over the world. 1 billion animals died in the Australian fire. And of course, with the National Geographic, is it planet or plastics we're actually after? So any national export strategy, any development must take account of how we deal with the environment, because at the end of the day, there's no planet B. And of course, corporate social responsibility is definitely on the rise. What's the implication? Understanding, knowing, predicting, and anticipating your customers is the prime preoccupation and must be the prime preoccupation of most of the businesses that we have today. And of course, our national export strategy. Now, we see many developments in the automobile industry. For example, hydrogen-powered cars. We've also seen Tesla, the electronic engine. But I want to ask the question, what do you think is Tesla's real business? Do you think it's producing cars? Can anybody tell me? Anybody has an idea? Anybody want to share anything? I see a chat.
Amelia says innovation.
Right, that's a good point. But what really is the core of their business? What are they really doing? So they are selling electric cars. But I think what a lot of people aren't seeing is that behind this whole electronic car is what we call data. Tesla is in the data business, actually, because every single customer who purchases a Tesla is connected to the web, to the central processing unit of Tesla. Now, you know, if you have a computer like an Apple or any of the others, and there's an update, you get it automatically on your computer, right? So when you buy a Tesla, what you actually buy is a continuously updating machine that is all learning all of the time with all of the people who are actually using it. So don't be fooled into thinking that Tesla is really into cars. And this is exactly why they are 2 years ahead of data, ahead of most of the German companies, actually. So it's really something to consider when you look at the future and where the future is going, because data is, in fact, the new oil. And of course, money follows the data. The revenues of the top 5 data companies, for example, Facebook, 40 billion, Google, and all of those, they are so much more. Amazon, 177 billion. So all of these companies are really about data, and Tesla is no different. And like oil, money is not in the refining of the data, not in the extraction of the data, but in the refining of that data. So data of itself is not useful, it's how it's being used. And I want to just go through some of the changes that we're seeing in the whole production side of it. So we looked at the customer side. Let's look quickly at the production side. Now we know about just-in-time production. Just-in-time with Ford, you need a black car, or whatever car, and they produce it just when you needed it. Well, the new business model is it's not even mine. Because with Uber doesn't own any cars. It's not even their own. But it's also about data and networking and platforms and the platform economy that actually gives you the head up. In the past, it was about owning things, but now it's about influencing them. Single firms are giving away to whole ecosystems. Pipelines of production are giving way to platforms, and of course, owning leading to influencing. So money was the old currency, or just money, but now it's money plus reputation. It's single firms versus whole systems. It's vertical and horizontal integration giving way to what we call diagonal and functional integration. And from production economies of scale, you have demand economies of scale. And I think it's really important when we heard one of the earlier presentations, when you think about the customers, it's not just about what the Gambia has, it's really about what customers want to buy. And I'd also say that I have purchased some really fantastic products from the Gambia. I haven't seen this product anywhere else, virgin avocado and coconut oil. I can recommend it. It's almost empty and I'm wondering where can I purchase it again, as well as many of these other things that we bought when we were there last time. But I think it's really important to really look at where the customers are heading. Technology is another important driver of change on the supply side. And in order to win, woo, and wow our customers, we need to use the World Wide Web. And I really want to thank GAIPA again and Lamin for really setting up this chat group and using the technology to make sure that we are all connected and in the loop. We need to use technology to be competitive. So we have 4.5 billion internet users worldwide. The largest store in the world without any buildings, without anything, is actually Amazon. The largest taxi company in the world without owning any taxis is Uber. And the largest hotel company in the world without owning a single hotel is Airbnb. And of course, the Chamber of Commerce is correct when they look at the fact that services are generating a lot of wealth and creating and changing value chains as well. So unless we change our thinking, unless we adapt and innovate, we will die. So we need to move with the times. There's change ahead. And more than ever, and we are happy to see that from the Chamber of Commerce to GAIPA to the Ministry of the Ministry of Trade and others, more than ever, we need a national export strategy, and more than ever, we need an integrated national export strategy, which is what we have been trying to deliver. So the National Export Strategy 2021 to 25, where we are and the current situation. Kevin, you want to take us through that a little bit?
Sure. Let's look very quickly on where we are in the Gambia today from an economic perspective. We see that nearly half of the population in Gambia is living below the poverty line. We see that unemployment is pretty high. For example, youth unemployment is at 12% currently. We see that the national debt is growing consistently every year. Inflation is high, over 7% at present. We see that Gambia, in terms of export performance, is performing below the regional average. And all of these point to the fact that, well, and of course you have COVID that will make things worse. But we also have to consider that while things may get worse, it's also an important opportunity, as Dr. Poon mentioned earlier. So all of these point to the fact that we really, truly need a national export strategy at this juncture. It's very critical moving forward. And here are some of the key success factors, Dr. Poon. Right.
So the key success factors, we have identified key success factors to make this, the Gambia's NES work. First of all, it needs to be resilient and COVID ready. It needs to stand the test of time. It needs to be agile. It needs to really move and to be able to be capable of responding to any kinds of trends and external threats that we know come all of the time. We need, as the Chamber of Commerce correctly mentioned, we need to remove supply constraints. We need to move up the value chain. We need to strengthen the country brand. Gambia needs to be strengthened. We need a market-driven approach, as we have seen. The customers are calling the shot. It's not anymore about what we could produce and what we like, but it's what our customers want. We have to have a sustainability-driven NES, one that does not destroy the environment, one that integrates and involves communities along the way and every single Gambian. We need, as many of stakeholders mentioned, we need an integrated approach to implementation. We need strong stakeholder involvement. And of course, we're all in this together, speaks the same language. We need excellent institutional support, and we also trust that that the Commonwealth Secretariat may be able to come in and support in terms of strengthening that institutional implementation capability. We need a distribution-oriented focus so that if I want to buy this right now from Berlin or from the Caribbean, we need to be able to find it. We need women and youth to be involved, and also we need inclusiveness in the whole development process. So let's look at where we want to go. The vision. An efficient and globally competitive export sector that is innovative, inclusive, resilient, and responsible. This is a vision that we came up with. And these are some of the points that you raised. Kevin, you want to mention some of them?
Sure. Some of the key words that was used: creativity, innovation, talking about using energy, food access, free movement. And so we tried to integrate many of these points into the vision and into the national export strategy.
And some of you may be able to recognize your own handwriting from the slide, actually. The mission: to fully utilize Gambia's human and national resources to drive export growth. And you notice that the vision and the mission are simple and easy so that everyone can remember it and be part of the process. How will we get there? Core strategic principles of the national export strategy. 1, be market driven, which means that not all customers are the same. We need to understand them. And we need to adapt our products to be customer oriented. And we give the example of KFC that actually made its product halal ready to cater to the Muslim, or the Maharaja Mac that caters to the Indians who do not eat beef. And of course, we need to produce what customers want. We may be able to produce the best typewriters in the world, but if customers want to buy computers, that's exactly what we have to produce. We need also to go niche. We cannot produce everything for everyone, and within every single product, we need to find what is the niche, what is a product, what is a unique selling proposition of the specific item that Gambia wants to put in the export market. For example, organic cashew milk, river tourism. So we need to go beyond products and services and to really look at the experiences. If we want to add value and to move up the value chain, we need to deliver unforgettable experiences to all customers. So take, for example, you're selling cashews, but what if people can actually come and pick their own cashews, or see the process of the cashew being made, or have their own name on the cashew bottle or something like that? So the world is moving from extraction, like where you take the coal and the things out of the ground, to make iron and steel to produce cars, to service in a restaurant, to delivering an experience. For example, encouraging or teaching people how to make something local, how to dance locally, how to... Do you know how many people in the world has never actually seen a cashew plant? To actually visit a cashew field, to work with a woman, to see how it's actually done, to sort them. And we call that agro-aerobics. So you go into the field and you pick your cashews and you do things like that, you carry it along, and people get fit doing that. So let's think about what kind of experiences we can actually deliver. Now, I want to give you an example of how you create value. So you have wheat being grown. You could bake a bread in the oven. You could sell the pizza in a restaurant, or you could orchestrate an unforgettable birthday party. Now tell me, which one gives you the most money? Obviously the birthday party. So we need to increasingly combine goods and services into experiences. and deliver those experiences. And the only limit to those experiences is the imagination. We need imagination and innovation. So we have to stop seeing workers as workers. They have to become actors, performers, storytellers in this whole way in which the world is changing. So we need to focus also on authenticity. What makes your product unique and special? What is truly Gambian about the products that you produce? Because customers today are tired of same old, same old, same old. So we need to change, and we need to add value in those regards as well. So content is king. What is your story? We also mentioned, taking the cashew nut example, in Mozambique, we actually visited a company, or we were in discussion with a company, and they told us that the American buyer will no longer buy from them unless they actually created a creche for the woman's kids. In other words, women do a lot of this work, but who thinks about looking after their kids? Don't you think women will be a bit more productive, or lots more productive, if in the knowledge that their kids are being looked after? So I think these are the ways in which we need to go a little bit beyond. We need to provide relevant content. What is your story? We need to be creative about your content and how you sell the content. And remember, honesty is always the best policy. We cannot say that we are sustainable if we are not sustainable. So we call it the Marley Principle. And remember that? You can fool some people some of the time. You can fool some people all of the time, but you cannot fool all of the people all of the time. So honesty will always be the best policy. So improving quality management and standards, we need to develop certain certificates like organic. For example, we don't just have to produce cashew, but we could do organic cashew. We could also, no harm. I mean, you can have fair trade certified. Fair trade certified means that we have paid the woman who processed those cashews, or the small farmers, a fair price for the cashew. And this already happens with coffee, but why not cashew? Why not some of the other products that we produce, including cocoa, coffee, sugar, and everything else that you produce? We need to innovate or die to be competitive, to be innovative, to be ahead of the game. So innovation transforms companies for higher competitiveness. So from comparative advantage, we're looking at competitive advantages. From natural attributes, we're looking at man-made attributes. It's not just having the river, but what you do with it that counts. Innovation driven by need compared to innovation driven by vision, in terms of what that river could do for you. In terms of something just happened, we need to create things and plan them. When we talk about innovation, we need to be first to the market. We need to follow innovators. We need to learn from customers. We need to learn from employees, and we need to learn from competitors. We also need to balance innovation with tradition. In other words, do not lose your identity while trying to become innovative. And of course, we need to think outside of the box, or somebody says, throw away the box. We need to strategically use technology, as we are using technology today to make progress. We need to remember that technology empowers customers, but it also empowers suppliers. Kevin, you want to take over?
Sure, and I mean, one of the critical points we want to make with technology today is that if you're not online, you're not on sale. And going back to the example with Dr. Poonen getting that product, the coconut oil and avocado. I mean, if you're not online, you're not on sale, right? And we have to consider that, I mean, mobile is also important. Social media, you're looking at so many people online these days, and we need to get with the program, basically. And with the internet, with technology, size really doesn't matter. So So while we may say that the Gambia is small in terms of population, in terms of its economy, when we have the technology, when we use it correctly, when we use the internet, it gives us the power to access markets and to take on large competitors, right? And of course, e-commerce is facilitating easy market access, right? And consider, for example, it's 48 billion and growing in terms of global online grocery sales. It's expected to reach 100 billion by 2025, and the average growth is about 15% per year. And now with COVID, it has become an even greater importance because everyone is buying online nowadays. So it's something that Gambia needs to get on board. And credit card, and this is another critical thing, and we've noticed from our field visit that it's very limited in the Gambia, and it needs to grow. We need to work with the financial institutions to get them on board and to get the technology into your hands, and whether it's a taxi driver or someone at one of the tourism sites or small business, to really use credit card, because nowadays people are not walking around with money anymore, right? So we have to be able to use the technology to do that.
Now, I think the use of technology is a brilliant example of pre-existing conditions. The technology was already there. The technology was already being used, but COVID is accelerating that paradigm shift through technologies. If not for COVID, we would not be speaking like this. We would not have our WhatsApp program. And many businesses are even thinking, boy, this is so wonderful. Do I really need to go to the office? Do I really need to travel anymore? So think about it. These trends were already there. COVID is speeding it up. People were already getting older. COVID is speeding it up. So the other important point is that you've got to be branded. And these are examples where countries have actually come together to position their country with different suppliers, like, for example, USA cotton. Why not Gambia cashews, Italian shoes, champagne? Do you know that champagne can only be called champagne if it comes from the region in Champagne? Nothing else. No sparkling wine could ever be in a bottle and be called the name champagne if it doesn't come from there. And this is why you need a geographical indicator. So made in Gambia needs to be relevant, and it needs to have brand muscle. When people think Gambia, they must think, wow. You know, when you think Germany, you think precision, you think cars. When you think Gambia, what do you want people to be thinking? So these are some of the areas in which we need to add value to where we're actually heading. And branding adds value. Because even if you look at, for example, this coconut avocado oil, do you know if Dior or one of these names want this, it will be 100 times or 1,000 times more expensive? So a brand does add value to where we're going. So raw, natural, fresh, and organic are now selling at a premium. So how do we begin to actually take advantage and to capture this value when we think about it? So raw is where it's at. Go raw, natural, authentic. Muscovado sugar is selling at a premium price, whereas the refined sugar is less expensive. So I think one of the things to consider is that Gambia is at a very important crossroads where customers are calling the shots and where customers want exactly what you have to offer in its raw form, in its real form. So look at the value of cow's milk that everybody has been supplying. Look at the value of almond milk, $1.95, and look at the value of cashew milk. So why not do that? Now, when people come to visit a country and they decide to live there, for some part of the year. I mean, you're talking about a very high value adding because they want to consume these natural avocado oils and these natural products that you have naturally because it helps with their well-being. And in fact, one of the things COVID is doing is speeding up that interest in things natural, things healthy, and things real. You have a great advantage, especially in terms of your agricultural industry. Now, one of the key strategic initiatives that we've found in Gambia is to fully utilize River Gambia. We were totally surprised that you have a big asset sitting there and it's just running. I mean, this is one of the major, most significant water sources and it's not being used. So we believe that tapping into that fantastic river resource will be extremely important, especially when our vision and our mission calls for using the natural and human resources of Gambia to create wealth for all. Now, remember we said that river equals water. Remember that? Water equals life. And of course, the river equals life. So let's bring that river to life and increase and improve the livelihood of Gambians in Gambia. So we want to make the point that the most expensive liquid in the whole world right now is water. Milk per liter is $1. Oil per liter is 1.60 to 1.75. And $4 for a liter of bottled water. And do you remember a few weeks ago when oil was minus, when oil did not cost anything because the price went to zero and oil was at a minus value because it was costing people to store the oil while nobody wanted to buy it. So it tells you more and more water is life. And using that water strategically, this river can actually influence and improve the resilience of Gambia. Because remember, resilience is about making sure that if rain doesn't fall and if you have global warming, you have a source of water. Now, how many of you know that the most productive sugar plantations in the world, the most productive sugar plantations under slavery in Haiti and the Dominican Republic were in Haiti and the Dominican Republic, mainly because in Haiti, they were run by the French who introduced irrigation. Now, of course, we come from the Caribbean, Trinidad and Tobago and Jamaica. And no one ever thinks about irrigating sugarcane. We leave our plants for the vicissitudes of if it rains, if sun shines, it shines. Mauritius today is the country that has the most productivity of its sugar. And that's because it wets the sugar, it irrigates the sugar. So we cannot allow our farmers in the Gambia to just rely on rainwater when you have a whole big river that could be used strategically for irrigation. You might also know that the two most significant ingredients in well-being, in livelihood, in tourism and everything else are, there's another one, but you may not know the answer, wood and water. Now tell me, what are you seeing for miles and miles and miles in this diagram? Wood and water. So I'm telling you, this is gold. You have to call it the Gold River just now. So tourism is also important because there are many activities that could happen around there. Agriculture can take place along this river. And the single most important strategic initiative of this NES is maximizing the two words that that we tried to find out from somebody last time? The value chain of the Gambia River. Okay? So all of these, so we have irrigation, we have fisheries, we have the big five that could be there, we have trade, we have transport, we have logistics. In other words, this River Gambia is a great opportunity for wealth creation that must be taken advantage of in a very responsible and sustainable manner, because we want this river to be looking good and be existing for the next couple of years. So as we've seen, the River Gambia opportunity, it's about resilience, it's about investment, IT, infrastructure, it's about value chains, value creation and value added, and it's about entrepreneurship and empowerment. And you see that spells river, R-I-V-E. Was it R, Kevin?
Responsibility.
And responsibility. Responsibility and resilience. So, okay. So we've done it in such a way that is very easy to remember. River, can you go back, Kevin? Resilience, investment, value creation, entrepreneurship, and responsibility. And that was Kevin's bright idea. Well done, Kevin. So survey, so these are some of the actions we need to do to start exploiting the Gambia River chain. And remember when we were together working out this on the board in the Gambia, in Banjul, survey the river. In other words, what the aquatic life, the depth, the transport, strategic areas, development opportunities, what resources are there? How many trees? What's the depth? Okay? Develop and map the River Gambia value chain. In other words, you shouldn't wake up in 2050 and see all kinds of things everywhere on the river. You should decide today, this is what we want the river to be and to look like, and these are the things we're doing. But to do that, you need to know what you're working with. And remember we said that if you're building a house, you need to know, you need to survey the land, you need to look at the depths, you need to look at the topography and all of those things. If you build a house that you want to last, well, it's very similar to the river. The river has a topography, the river has different things. We need to find that out. And I think if it's one thing that you can put together to get somebody like the World Bank or somebody to fund, is developing the strategic River Gambia master plan to see how that could actually develop. We need to identify existing activities. We need to identify a needs assessment, investment, transport. Who are the communities? Which communities? How are they accessing? How are they traversing? Where should be the connectivities? How should it be developed? Transport, infrastructure, carry out a feasibility study of activities and opportunities, carry out development activities at strategic locations along the river, the bridges, the lodges, irrigation. In other words, you don't want every single farmer putting in an irrigation thing and dredging the river. We need to investigate the relationship between the River Gambia and resilience. How could the River Gambia lead to the resilience of the small farmers? We also need to see what are those farmers throwing into the river that makes it not so nice, that's killing the fish. Too much of pesticides, too much of all of those things. Develop a master plan for River Gambia, approve, fund, and implement the River Gambia master plan. In other words, all of you need to agree on what the resources are, what should take place, what the customers want, who should develop it, which locations should be locations where, for example, people locally, regionally, and internationally can actually come and live along the river. Where should that be, and why, and how? Okay, so let's pause for some questions and comments.
So you have two options to ask questions. You could either click on the raise your hand option, or you can type in your question in the chat group and we'll respond to it. No questions from anyone?
No, let's wait a bit. Think about it. We've been talking a long time. Ask questions on anything, comment. Just raise your hand if there are any.
Okay, I'm seeing Babaku, right? Okay, go ahead, ask your question. I'm unmuting you. Right, go ahead and ask your question.
Can you hear me? Good,
Yes, we
good
can hear you.
afternoon. Yes, thank you very much for the presentation. I am Babukar Kebe, the CEO of the Gambia Youth Chamber of Commerce. I must commend GAIFA and all the consultants for the good work. I think you have actually highlighted and bring out the real issues that Gambia really needs if we really want to export to the world. But just one question that I may have missed in the presentation would be, what is that 2-3 things that you find that the Gambia have niche over in terms of the other African continents, and how do we also how do you see Gambia with the Africa Free Trade Continental Agreement, with the coming of this next? So key thing is, what is the niche that you think Gambia have over certain countries within the continent vis-a-vis the AFTA? Thank you.
Thank you very much. A lot of the niches are included in the different sectors of the economy, where there's cashew and so. Some of the niches will need to be created, for example, responsible cashews or organic cashews or fair trade cashews. But I would say that the river is something very unique and special about the Gambia. It's also very, I would say also its location. I mean, you have Senegal, I mean, surrounds it. I mean, the fact that you're English speaking, I think your strategic location is absolutely critical and important. That could help other things. And a lot of the other strategic things will need to be created, man-made, person-made, in order to really capture those markets. But that's just the beginning.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we also have a question from Fatou Jallo. I'm going to unmute. Go ahead, you can ask your question, Fatou Jallo.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you so much to GAIFA and the Commonwealth for organizing this. I found the session so far very interesting, particularly the one on the River Gambia, in terms of how it can be optimally utilized. I just want to, my colleague Amelia Jazz, who's also on the call. Sorry, I should have introduced myself. I'm the project coordinator for the Youth Empowerment Project and work with the International Trade Center in the Gambia. So we clearly note that maybe you might have missed the roadmap that has been developed for tourism in terms of creating employment opportunities as well as jobs for young people. So I think it's important if you could also take a look at that. This I had mentioned way back in one of the working sessions that GAIFA had organized on the NES. And my colleague has also shared the link to the roadmap, but also in terms of the Ninkinanka Trail, which is also a CBT product, a model that we are also using. So I see a lot of synergies in terms of what we have in this roadmap, which is for 2018 to 2022, with what I've seen in I would say the plan that you have in the document. So I guess we'll discuss more when we get to the details on the tourism and related sectors. Thank you, and over.
Thank you, Ms. Jallo. If I may just comment on that. The whole issue of integration and alignment of the NES with other documents, we scoured and reviewed and analyzed a lot of documents out there, and I'm sure you know that the Gambia has a lot of policies, a lot of plans, and we reviewed as many as we could, and the roadmap was one of the plans that we looked at to ensure that there was alignment as well, and to ensure that there's no duplication and or contradictory plans or activities. Are there any other questions? All right, if we don't have any more questions, I think we should move on in the interest of time.
Yes.
So these are some of the specific sector strategies that we're going to look at, specifically tourism and fisheries. And then tomorrow we will look at manufacturing, groundnuts, cashew, and which one did I miss?
Wait, just before you go on, there's some, okay, we saw the link.
Yeah,
All
those
right.
were comments.
Thank you very much. So I'm just going to review some of the chats. Those products are produced by Kodu Fal. You can reach her on that number. Thank you very much. So I can get some more when I need. Wonderful. The Nine Langa River Trail, we see the link. Excellent. Thank you, Amelia, for that link. From Yinka said that, absolutely so, no doubt. Brilliant acronym of river. The other link has been sent to everyone. Thanks, Dr. Poon. I remember there was a suggestion to change our country brand to Flowing with Opportunities to depict the importance of the river. Okay. Thanks, Dr. Poon. I remember, right, I see that. Okay. Yes, a comment. We already implemented the plans and no, the NNT is not mentioned.
The Ninki Nanka Trail. Yes, it's mentioned in the document. You may have missed it.
That means you have to go back to reading it, please. Okay, so let's move on. Sector strategies. So the River Gambia is one overarching strategic initiative that must be taken for the whole country. So we're going to proceed now to look at some of the specific individual strategies for the sectors. So tourism.
Okay, we see that tourism, of course, is going to be significantly affected by COVID. The United Nations World Tourism Organization estimates that there'll be an 80% decline in tourism arrivals for the year 2020. So looking at from April to December, experts suggest that we may have a vaccine by the middle of 2021. So our forecast took those into effect. Looking at past outbreak of diseases, for example, in 2014, when there was the outbreak from Ebola and the effects that, that happened in the Gambia in terms of tourism, we were able to then develop a forecast, and we see that we're looking at about a 3-year recovery time for things to go back to normal, assuming that the vaccine and all of that takes place as planned. Similarly with receipts, we see that the receipts might be a little slower, of course, because there will be some economic implications with COVID as well, and that factored into our forecast. So we're looking at by 2025, $131 million generated from the tourism industry. We see that in tourism, our largest market is Europe. More than 2/3 of the international arrivals from Europe. And this is an important point because we need to get away from our dependence on the European market, and we need to diversify our markets as well in the tourism sector, but in all sectors as well. And from a COVID perspective, we see that local and regional markets will become increasingly important as we move forward, because people will be looking at closer destinations rather than international markets when traveling because of the risks involved. These were some of the strengths that together as stakeholders we identified in the tourism sector. So Dr. Poon mentioned the location earlier, that as a strategic point, and it's also important for the tourism sector. The new political stability of the country is important. the existence of hotel accreditation and standards within the Gambia as well that is being implemented by the GTB. Natural and pristine ecosystem compared to other destinations puts the Gambia in a good position from tourism. The fact that Gambia is English speaking and some of the largest markets are also English speaking, North America and the United Kingdom, for example. There's a dedicated tourism development areas based on the tourism development plan. There's an international reputation as being a relatively safe and friendly destination. Of course, the Gambia is known as the smiling coast of Africa, and that is a very important point or important strength for tourism. There are a lot of cultural heritage sites. It's an agrarian-based society, so you get high quality of food, and the whole issue of organic, again, coming through, because a lot of travelers are, as identified before, very sophisticated, and they're looking for organic, they're looking for raw, they're looking for real and authentic experiences, and Gambia has that in spades. We also note the relaxed visa system that Gambia has, particularly for Africa, EU, and the Commonwealth, and this bodes well for the tourism sector. And of course, the brilliant natural beauty of the Gambia, the river, the trees, the animals, and the people. That makes a very beautiful destination. And there's some key issues that we have to consider moving forward, and many of these issues were factored in terms of developing the strategies and the actions. So responsible tourism is very important. You cannot destroy the environment. You cannot destroy the communities and the culture. So you don't want to have high-rise hotels popping up all over the place, destroying the environment, and not taking into consideration the needs and the wants of the community. So that is what responsible tourism is all about. And we were pleased to see ACERT focusing on responsible tourism and making it happen on the ground. So kudos for that. We also see the need for a better understanding and appreciation of the tourism sector. We noted that a lot of people, both from the public and private sector, are not fully aware or fully understand what tourism is all about. It's not just about heads in beds or bums in seats. It's not just about the number of arrivals, but you have to see the whole economic linkages and the axial potential that tourism has to dynamite and to ignite other sectors of the economy. So be it agriculture, the manufacturing sector, creative industries, professional services, and so on. We see tourism playing a key role because it brings a ready export market into the Gambia. We're looking at over 200,000 visitors coming to the Gambia every year, and that's a ready market that we can actually tap into and brings foreign exchange. We also see that there are high leakages that need to be plugged. As we know, Gambia is a very import-oriented economy, and it also affects the leakages from the tourism sector as well. We're looking at local ownership, local community participation that also help to plug the leakages. And of course, strengthening the linkages need to be important. And this is one of the things that we focused in the NAS on, strengthening the linkages between tourism and other sectors of the economy. As we spoke earlier, value added is important, and we see that there's not enough value added in the tourism sector, and this needs to change. Of course, we mentioned earlier the importance of the River Gambia, and in terms of tourism, it's grossly underutilized. Yes, we have tourism initiatives along the River Gambia, such as the Ninki Nanka Trail. There are a few tourism lodges along the River Gambia, but it's a start. It's a good start, but there's so much more that could be done, that needs to be done. Of course, we all know that air access continues to be a challenge. I mean, in getting to the Gambia, for example, from where I am in Trinidad, I mean, it took me about 26 hours. That's more than a day to get there. And of course, when you have other closer destinations, it makes the destination a little less competitive. Another key thing, product development is required. And yes, there are more, there are initiatives taking place already, such as the mentioned earlier, the Ninki Nanka Trail development that is happening. We see there are some hotels coming along and so on, but more product development needs to take place. The man-made element needs to be considered. What do we do with the nature? What do we do with the natural assets, the natural sites and attractions that we have in the Gambia? How do we make it world-class? Another key issue is focusing on quality, and not just quality products or quality hotels, but quality people. So the training that needs to be done, and we see the insufficient tourism human resources. So training is an important point in increasing quality, the quality of service, and of course, if the quality of the way that management treats their staff needs to be improved, because if you treat your staff with quality, they will give you quality service as well. And we need to move beyond sun, sand, sea, and safari to developing, orchestrating exceptional and unforgettable experiences. Because people don't remember a chandelier or a nice plush carpet or a soft bed. What they remember is how you make them feel. And exceptional experiences is what will create that emotive sense of longing for the destination. We also need to be proactive in terms of our investment. We need to really go out there and look for tourism investments, go to where the tourism investors are, rather than sitting in the Gambia waiting for investors to come to us. We also see that ICT needs to be leveraged. I mean, maybe 4G, 5G needs to be implemented in Gambia. How is the telecommunications infrastructure doing? How are we leveraging, for example, free Wi-Fi at attractions, at the beaches, at different destinations, so that our visitors can actually promote the destination for us for free? Because when they like, when they share pictures, that is a free promotion, free marketing for the destination. But it can't happen if we don't have the sound IT infrastructure on the ground. So in the coming up with the strategies and the activities, here are some of the targets. We're looking at reaching 286,000 visitors by the year 2025. Again, that is based on a forecast and taking COVID into account. We need to look at arrivals growing by an average of 3.3%, and revenues reaching 174 million by the year 2025, growing at 3.5%. And here are some of the tourism strategies and actions. Now, we didn't go into all of them, but we picked out some of the most critical ones. Again, we need to develop a responsible and resilient tourism industry for real. So it's not just about talking, it's not just about having responsible tourism in a policy, but it's actually each and every Gambian, public sector, private sector stakeholders, whether you're inside or outside the tourism sector, taking responsibility and actively contributing to the development and growth of the tourism sector. And to do this, we need to carry out environmental carrying capacity analysis. What's the carrying capacity of some of the natural sites, some of the natural destinations, so that we don't destroy it. We need to develop proper community outreach programs to get the communities involved, to get them to actually to own and manage some of the natural sites. We need to develop incentives that would encourage the use of local content as opposed to importing content. So for example, there are a lot of artists and artisans in the Gambia. How are hoteliers using their products? I mean, we were happy to see some of the hotels having some of the local art on display, but one hotel is not enough. It needs to be across the board, across the sector. We need to develop an arts and cultural skills development center or learning facility, again, tying in and tourism with the creative industries, creating that strong linkage. And this is one of the activities that, that we see that can do that. Another key strategy is to prepare for and mitigate against external shocks. And of course, COVID is one of those external shocks that we need to be working towards and mitigating against and building resilience. One of the suggestions coming out of the stakeholder consultations was the development of a tourism emergency fund, and suggesting a small tax of $10 per person. And I mean, the Gambia is welcoming over 200,000 visitors every year. So $10 by 200,000, that can create $2 million every year coming into the Gambia that can help build this tourism emergency fund and build resilience. Another key thing, and this goes for tourism, but it also goes for all the other sectors as well, is building an attractive tourism destination for investment purposes. So again, simplify and make the ease of doing business, I mean, a streamlined and simple process, getting rid of as much of the bureaucracies as possible. I mean, and doing the benchmark analysis, we see countries like Switzerland and so on, having a very open, very streamlined system using the technology, allowing people to basically register on a one-stop portal that they can do all of their applications in one place rather than having to physically move around from one government agency to another. So a process that should take a few hours should not take a few days or even weeks. And the technology will help with that. Of course, we need to review and revamp the incentive regime for investment to make it more competitive and more attractive. We need to identify specific parcels of land within the tourism development areas for tourism investment opportunities. And we need to promote it. So someone who sees the Gambia as a possible destination, they do not now need to come on the ground and do scouring and trying to figure out. We need to have a compendium of potential sites already developed, already highlighted, so that people can say, well, look, there are these 10 areas in the east, in the south, or along the river that could be developed. We have already done some of the groundwork already for you in terms of the environmental impact assessments, maybe some of the feasibility studies. Make it as easy as possible for investment. And we need to actively seek out and target investors. Don't just sit in the Gambia waiting for investors to come. We need to go to the markets. We need to go to investment trade shows. For example, every other year, there's an investment trade show that takes place in Berlin. We need to go and seek out these investors and say, look, here are some 10 opportunities in the Gambia. This is the kind of investors we want. Which one do you pick? And also in terms of targeting investors, it's not just targeting anyone with money. It's also saying, well, look, this is what we want. We want a responsible, resilient, sustainable tourism destination. And so we are looking for responsible and sustainable investors as well. So we're not just following the money, but we are following the investors that can actually make a difference in the Gambia. And of course, while the Gambia already has some relaxed entry visa requirements, we need to relook it to see how we can make it even more relaxed for investment purposes. Another key thing, as we mentioned earlier, one of the challenges is that people don't fully understand the economic and social impact of tourism. And so we are proposing to develop an awareness campaign targeting communities, schools, and the wider public from the president come down, so that they can understand and fully become aware of the impact of tourism, what it can do to really transform the Gambia. We also need to create attractive tourism products and, most importantly, experiences. Do we really know all of the different experiences, the different natural and cultural assets that we have in the Gambia? Is there somewhere that is recorded? Is there a website that someone can go to and say, well, okay, here are the top 50 or the top 20 or the top 30 sites and attractions within the Gambia? We need to also look at not just the attractions, but the potential assets. Perhaps there are things that are happening in the Gambia that could then be converted into an experience, converted into a tourism product, that we're just missing the ball simply because we are not fully aware that it exists, right? So these are some of the things we need to do. So, and we need not just inventory it, but prioritize it. there are 50 of them. Okay, these are the top 20 that we are going to focus on, that we're going to develop, that we're going to really make world class, and then upgrade those sites. We also see along the River Gambia, one of the initiatives, it's to build jetties and to make it easier to traverse along the River Gambia as well. And there are others in terms of adding more ferries and so on. So there are quite a few things that we highlighted within the River Gambia as well from a tourism perspective. We need to ensure quality tourism, review the quality standards. And while there are quality standards, we need to see, are they really what we need to be looking at? Do the quality standards include the issue of responsibility and resilience? So we need to look at those as well. And we need to strengthen the institutional capacity to enforce the standards, because I mean, standards on their own is like having a lion without teeth. I mean, what use is a lion without teeth? So we need to put teeth to the standards by enforcing it and making it happen. Another important point, technology. We really, truly need to take advantage of technology and transform the Gambia into a modern tourism destination. We mentioned earlier about implementing free Wi-Fi at different attractions, different points, to make it more attractive as well, to develop and implement flexible payment systems like mobile money and credit cards. I mean, speaking from my perspective, being on the ground in the Gambia, I'm not used to walking around with lots and lots of cash. But in the Gambia, unfortunately, in order to buy things, to get around, you really have to be walking around with wads and wads and wads of cash. And the modern, sophisticated customer of today, they are not accustomed to that. So we need to have the technology on the ground to be able to facilitate what customers want, because customers want to be able to pay with credit cards or mobile money or something like that. And we need to provide the support and encourage tourism businesses and all businesses to be e-ready, to take advantage of the technology, to get online and provide training and capacity building to make that reality. We also see that we need to ensure that tourism programs meet the needs of the sector. So in terms of training, in terms of human resource development, we really need to carry out a need assessment to understand exactly what are the needs in the sector, what are our suppliers looking for in terms of human resources, and develop a program to match that, as opposed to simply developing a standard program that is in a vacuum, or that is divorced from the stakeholders, the suppliers on the ground. And of course, we need to identify and develop training programs every year that can fill the gaps based on what the needs tell us. And a very important point, as we know that the Gambia is very seasonal in terms of tourism arrivals, so we need to find a way of smoothing that. And with COVID moving forward, we need to really look at regional and local markets, so encourage domestic tourism through an annual Stay to Getaway campaign. And I know we've had these similar campaigns in the past. It's just a question of revamping it and focusing on it more significantly moving forward. We need to identify and develop new products, services, niches, and markets. As mentioned, we've too focused on the European market. It's a great market, but what other markets can we go after? How can we encourage regional travel? Visitors from Nigeria, from South Africa, how can we really grow that? And again, once we have identified the new niches or diversified our niches, go after the investors to invest in those priority niches. I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add, Dr. Poon?
No, I think that was very good, very well. I think the important thing is to get the feedback and comments from the team, from our owners and stakeholders.
Right, there's a comment from Modu Toure, who is saying that local content should not be limited to arts and music, but extended to agricultural products, meat, eggs, vegetables, fruits, and so on, to ensure that benefits trickle down to local population. And we totally agree with that. Again, in terms of beefing up linkages, we need to connect with all sectors. The arts and the creative industry was just an example that we pointed out, but it really applies to all sectors: manufacturing, agriculture, cashew, horticulture, all of it. So that's a very, very valid point. Thank you for that. Are there any other questions, comments? You can raise your hand or you can make a comment there. I see.
Trying to raise hand.
Okay, there's a comment from Bakari Saidikan. I hope I'm not pronouncing your name incorrectly. That says, good afternoon all. Tourism growth has been impressive, but sustainability is a concern. Agreed. While the tourism sector has performed beyond expectations with record tourist arrivals and new international investments, future growth of the sector was to depend on the tourism master plan in the following areas: improving air access to and from key markets linked to target destination promotion and marketing, improving the quality of tourism facilities through classification and grading systems, attracting new investment gates towards expanding the range of tourism products and developing for ecotourism, etc. However, that was before the COVID pandemic. Hopefully the new NES will reflect on these the concerns of the tourism master plan and will factor the above and be inculcated for the way forward. Tourism is a sector we cannot afford to lose. Valid point, and we totally agree.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we see,
I'm trying to find a way to raise my hand. I can't.
I'm seeing that you're raising, but you need to unmute. Who is asking the question? Is it Amadou?
Yes. Hello,
Yes.
hello, Kevin.
Yes.
Hello, Kevin.
Yes.
This is
Okay,
Lamin.
we'll take
Lamin
a comment from Amadou first. Go ahead, Amadou.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we're hearing you loud and clear.
Thank you. Excellent presentation. Not much to add, really. Very, very good one. I think just one area I wanted to point out in case that had not been captured in the entire document. I can imagine you are not presenting everything in the document. But where you mentioned, you talked about the Tourism Emergency Fund. I think that's a brilliant idea. But I wanted to also propose that something in that area be also considered. We're currently having a health response team or structure that is taking care of issues since the COVID-19 arose globally and here in the country. And it has been doing a lot of useful job in terms of coordination and bringing stakeholders together, et cetera, developing the containment and mitigation strategies and all that. But I wanted to think that since tourism and of course agriculture are so key as drivers of the economy, it might be worthwhile to consider a kind of crisis response unit for tourism as a continuation of the current nerve center that we have for COVID. COVID ends someday, but we cannot rule out another pandemic coming in the future. And we have seen COVID-19 has laid bare the serious vulnerability of the tourism sector for the Gambia. Very, very vulnerable. We cannot really avoid to miss that. So since this is a risk management issue, I want to suggest, if that had not been taken into consideration, to think about something like a crisis response unit for the tourism sector. Actually, it can be for both tourism and agriculture, since the two are so interrelated. And I think they would play the same job after COVID and continue. We don't have to now wait for a crisis to strike. We have to start planning and preparing. So I think we need to institute that in place to be able to act ahead of time. That was one suggestion I wanted to make. Another one, not another one, but just to also point out that I think based on the presentation that we've just heard, the interlinkages between tourism and agriculture and other sectors did not come out very clearly. Maybe it is there, but I think given the importance, it needs to be stronger than what we have heard so far. I think so far, those are the two comments. I have others, but I can wait till later. Thank you.
Yeah. Can I just comment on that just quickly? I would like to suggest that we should probably call it not an emergency fund, but perhaps a resilience fund that could cover whatever comes up, especially environmental issues. Because after COVID and everything else, I think something needs to be in place to ensure that the environment is being protected, that responsibility is really being taken and so. And I think when customers see that it's for responsibility and environmental thing, they are much happier to contribute than if it's like just an emergency something. So it's something to think about for the future in terms of what we call it, but how it's used could be for the crisis response unit or whatever, but it could be for a crisis response unit for the environment as well, not just for people. So I think we need to broaden the whole idea about resilience, responsibility, the environment, and how that's used. Your point on interlinkages, I think it's an excellent one, and we'll certainly beef it up and strengthen it within the context of the final NES.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Dr. Poon. This is Lamin Gay. I'm still hosted on Mr. Bay's laptop. I just want to make two comments. And then the first one is very much related to the comment made by Amadou, and that is the linkage between the tourism industry and other sectors of the economy. Can you hear me?
Yes, we're hearing you loud and clear.
Yeah, tourism is a very pivotal sector in the Gambia. By far the largest contributor to foreign exchange earnings and to GDP. And the sector is very much, other sectors are very much dependent, on the tourism sector. For the performance. Agribusiness, fashion and apparel, the taxi drivers, even individual vendors. And tourism as a services exports contribute extensively to our international trade performance. Although not as tangible as trade in products, but if you look at tourism as a services export component, from a services export component, you will want to integrate it or link it with the other sectors to enhance the experience that tourists want to kind of enjoy or realize when they come to the Gambia. And in the process also other sectors are lifted and their performance are enhanced. And this is in line with the triple bottom line in tourism, particularly looking at issues of economic empowerment and also social development. So I'm glad that Dr. Poon has taken note of that comment and made a commitment to see that more elucidated in the NAS design. The other point that I want to make, as Kevin mentioned in his presentation, that the Gambia is heavily dependent on Europe. Both in terms of trade in products and services trade. So we have other trade preferential regimes. For example, the AFCFTA is now in motion. We have the ECOWAS protocols also, we have the China trade, preferential regime also for LDCs, of which Gambia is a part. So we would want to also see a very strong nexus between the strategy and some of these trade preference regimes, with a view to positioning Gambia to harness the opportunities that exist therein. Thank you.
Yinka?
Yes,
Yinka had a comment. You need to unmute yourself. Right.
Yes, I've unmuted myself. Thank you, Kevin. Yeah, I just wanted to make a point about joining up some of the enabling tools to what we're trying to achieve in the sector. And I guess this doesn't just apply to tourism, but as we're speaking about tourism at this moment, and it's about digitalization and the use of services outside of the hospitality and entertainment sector, for example. Because one of the ways that we could think about broadening the appeal of tourism for the Gambia is to look at how we create those kind of products that you're seeing more and more of in the digital space in terms of virtual tours, for example. So during this COVID experience, we've seen the ascent of virtual tours material being used on digital platforms. And these tours can be monetized, as you know, if they're linked to, for example, YouTube or Facebook or even Pinterest. You know, there's so many of these platforms that are out there where people are uploading virtual tour content, which is monetized. So it's just to say there may be other strands of connectivity tools that we can utilize in the tourism sector, which would help to broaden the appeal, bring in other potential new visitors to the country in the future, because someone may go on a virtual tour of the Northern Lights, for example, for Iceland, and then say, oh, you know what, that was so great. This is a country I would want to visit. So it's a marketing tool as well as a product that can be monetized. So just wanted to put that in there as part of a product enhancement. Thank you.
That's brilliant, Yinka. Excellent point.
And just to add to that, what Yinka is talking about as well, I mean, they're also, in terms of using technology on the ground as well, like a lot of destinations are using destination apps that you can actually see different sites and you can plan out your trip using the destination app. And in terms of the response unit that was mentioned earlier, the destination app can then be used, for example, by the Ministry of Tourism or the GTB to actually monitor the movement of visitors. They can see where visitors are at any point in time. They can use that as a way of collecting data as well. Where are they visiting? How long are they staying? Those kinds of things to also help with the destination management planning and so on. So that's a valid point. I know, for example, in Jamaica, they're also using, in addition to virtual reality, they're also using augmented reality, where you can actually be in a physical place, but using your smartphone, you can actually see what a place used to look like 50 or 60 years ago, which is called augmented reality. So with technology, the limit really is the imagination. And we can really use it to enhance the visitor experience, to manage the visitor experience.
Added to that, Kevin, I would say that whether we like it or not, technology is great, but garbage in, garbage out. So just as how a YouTube video could help you to get interest in a destination, it could also turn you off. These videos are professional tools done by professionals with great content. It's curated, you know, the story is written up. It's not like just somebody taking something and just doing anything with it. So it needs to be properly planned and invested in and seen as a proper tool.
Yes,
and curated.
That. Yes, yes. It's when you look at the ones that are the most successful, they are the ones that are professionally produced, they're curated. you know, the equipment is of a good standard, so you can see visually that it's been a well thought out product and not just hung up. Yeah.
And a lot of destinations are actually used, like Singapore, for example. They're big on that you could actually visit the artificial treetops and do a tour there, and it's a guided tour. They're telling you things, so you actually feel part of the experience. So that's a very valid point. Are there any other questions? We see a couple comments coming in here. I want to endorse, this is from Olayinka. I want to endorse Dr. Poon's suggestion for renaming the potential fund as a resilience fund rather than emergency fund. We see Amelia Diaz saying, fully agree, virtual tours are a key way to enhance promotion and marketing. And the Ninki Nanka Trail has a virtual tour, so excellent. Amelia, you want to add a comment?
Yes, thank you so much. It's been really great to join and share our experience and resources. As mentioned by my colleague Fatu, we are part of the International Trade Center, and we've been working with the different communities along the river in community-based tourism, and we have used a lot of the promotional material in trade fairs. You mentioned ITV, and we've been working with the Gambia Hotel Association and the tour operators on enhancing their digital marketing. But following one of the points that was just mentioned by Dr. Poon is the importance is that once you go digital, you know, you don't exist if you're not digital, but that also brings on a lot of responsibility, of course. And something that we try to share in our trainings is that also means managing those websites. If you are present on TripAdvisor, on Google, etc., you know, there's also that customer engagement, because it can be a way to boost your visibility and your brand, but it can also be one that can destroy it if there's comments and if there's just a negative feedback. So from our side, you know, just to emphasize the importance of going digital, but being able to provide businesses with the digital literacy to be able to use those to their advantage. And currently we have launched a webinar program that focuses on communication strategies and customer engagement and digital marketing. So if you don't mind, I would love to share this application because as colleagues and everyone in this industry, you know, to share the resources available. And this training is starting next week. So I'm going to just put it on the link here.
Perfect.
Again, it's focusing on digital literacy. So thank you so much again for inviting us.
And I would like to add to Amelia's point. I mean, in terms of using the technology and the responsibility that goes with it. Customers today, they want to be heard and answered right away. And I mean, Tourism Intelligence, Leve Global, we actually own a property in Tobago and we manage that property in Tobago. So, I mean, we understand tourism on the ground. And I mean, people message us or call our phone at 11 p.m. at night, 1 o'clock in the morning, because they expect someone to be there. They expect someone to answer, right? And that is the world that we're living in today. They want immediate. So part of that responsibility is being able to respond to their needs and to their questions as quickly as possible. There's a comment from Angela just before I go to Amadou. Angela is saying, I agree. One thing that cannot be ignored is that digital is a must. With COVID-19, everyone has moved online. And if you can manage to stimulate and attract on digital, it makes it easier to go physically in the future. I see Amelia has also shared the link. Amadou, you had a point to make?
Yeah, thank you. Just two small ones. The first one actually was to just reinforce the earlier point that I made. I think, I hope it's not being mixed up with the proposed fund. I think the fund is quite different from the concept of the response unit. The fund may even a resource for the unit, but it's completely different. So whether it's called resilience fund or emergency fund or whatever, the crisis response unit actually is going to help tackle resilience, sustainability, the climate change issues, and everything, because it's quite vulnerable. There are other vulnerabilities to our tourism sector, apart from things like pandemic here. So, and again, as I said, another pandemic may emerge. So I think it's something that we normally in the developing world do not take care of. Even for food reserves and certain basic things, we are quite weak in those areas. But I think now with what we have suffered under COVID-19, I think this should be very, very important. So just you look at it again and give it its due consideration, because it means just continuing from where COVID-19 stops and make sure that continued review and planning and preparedness in case something happens. I think that is very key. We cannot wait until something strikes and then we start thinking. I think that is very poor planning. The second thing I wanted to mention about digital also is that, yeah, I think some points have been mentioned, and I was just doing a study for one of the institutions here, looking at COVID and its impact on the businesses, including those in the tourism sector. Of course, I have to ask for permission, maybe, if I could say anything from the report, because it's not yet official. But I think this is very important, and there are a lot of synergies with this project. And that is that we were able to review carefully what may be most relevant to Gambian companies, especially the small businesses, but also the medium ones. And we identified some top priorities for MSMEs as they plan to adopt digital services over the next 6 months. And for small businesses, I just mentioned a list here very quickly. We identified online training of their employees, live chat. It's becoming very, very trendy. Mobile apps, somebody mentioned that. Business intelligence, e-commerce, and finally, CRM, billing, ERP. That is for small business. For medium businesses, we also highlighted priorities for digital as online presence, that's a must, marketplaces that offer access on tools, digital advertising, data analytics, we have to start entering into that, real-time tracking and tracing. This will also help with traceability, I mean, especially for the incorporated food sector within the tourism sector, as you know, but also other areas, and also IoT, Internet of Things solutions. So these were just proposals we've made, and I think they will be relevant to also this NES. Thank you.
Can I just also add, Amelia Diaz sent this link to this webinar. I think it's extremely important that every single person in the Gambia takes part in that training, because that is the future. It's extremely important. I'm not sure if you could promote it among your colleagues, among other people, but I think the more training, the merrier, especially in the travel industry. I think the link should be sent to the hotel associations, to the chambers of commerce, to whoever, because this will get you ready and resilient for the future. Nothing beats it. And it's there. I think it's free, if I'm not mistaken. Well, take advantage.
Yes, Dr. Poon?
Yes.
Any feedback to the points that I just raised?
Well, I think they're excellent. I think we need to coordinate properly and make sure that we take them on board.
Hopefully.
Hopefully. Most of them are.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. They were carefully studied over a period of time and suggested in line with the levels of the businesses that we have here, that we work with. I'm a business development consultant.
Okay, fantastic. Unfortunately, we have you recorded, so if you missed anything, it will certainly be taken on board. And if you want to add anything else, I mean, more than welcome.
Thank you.
So, Amadou, is that your image in your screen, Amadou? Is that because you've got a still picture, but we don't see you on video?
That is Lionel Messi.
Okay, now I see you. I thought it was Lionel Messi, but I wasn't sure. Your face. Yeah.
I am a very black Gambian.
You're very charming Gambian. You know, yeah. So I just wanted to know what agencies you're working with at the moment, as well. Which agencies are you mostly collaborating with? Just quickly, because you said you're a business consultant.
Yeah, here I go very briefly. Actually, the study that I just mentioned, I was doing it for Gambia Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and it was called. It was a rapid online survey that I deployed using SurveyMonkey, looking at the impact of COVID-19 on Gambian businesses generally. So a good sample was picked up, and we sent the questionnaire, the tool, to all of the businesses, micro, small and medium, and even large businesses that are outside of the MSME bracket. So we got some very good responses that were analyzed, and probably and also made some recommendations. But again, that's for GCCI. I'm just a consultant, so they are owners of the study and the content.
Okay, thanks very much for that. Thank you.
Can you send us a copy of the study?
Yes, if I can ask, as I said, the owners. I'm sure they'll be willing to, because they're all looking at the same sectors for support. The main idea was to look at strategies for supporting businesses during the now, the next, and the beyond, of course. Right. So we were looking, we asked a lot of questions considering the periods also from the first 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, and after 1 year, and the business and the sentiments from the entrepreneurs in the country. And we looked at across almost all the sectors. Of course, it was not a very large sample, but due to online, if you do online surveys, sometimes response rates, it's very difficult, and we could not keep hanging and waiting. But it was enough to make some suggestions, especially for the public sector, to come up with some support, some stimulus package or some recovery package for small businesses, because so far they're hard hit and there's very little support. Okay. So the main idea for this study was to work in that direction.
Thank you.
Good.
Can you tell us which time?
I'm happy to say also that I'm working currently with Amelia and her team. I'm part of the coaches for the training of those small businesses that she just talked about.
Excellent.
We have some comments in the chat, Kevin. I don't know if you're seeing those. Yes? About ICT. Kevin, you're on mute. Kevin, you've muted yourself. Kevin? He's muted himself. You need to unmute yourself.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry about that. Yes, what I was saying is that we're continuing tomorrow. So we have other things to cover. Technology could also be one of it. But just to answer quickly, yes, there's a whole section under the cross-cutting issues that deals with the issue of technology and information communication technology and so on, that deals with providing training, for example, for e-commerce, helping and working with the financial services sector to have alternative digital payment possibilities. So there are quite a few. The whole point we mentioned earlier about getting Wi-Fi at some of the destinations. So there's a whole section that deals with technology in the export strategy. Right? Shall we move on then? Yeah, okay, so we're going to move on to the next sector. I know we're encroaching on time, but let's get as much done as we can. So the next sector is fisheries. And as we know, fisheries is a very important sector in the Gambia. There are a lot of small and micro businesses involved. It's very artisanal in nature. It's a very huge supplier of food for the country. A lot of women, a lot of youth are involved in the fisheries sector. So it's a very important sector for the Gambia. Of course, we see that fisheries is a bit sporadic, but growing generally. Some of the main markets include Europe, South Africa, North America, and so on. And we just need to focus a little bit on getting some new markets. We see here that Taiwan is highlighted, but we understood that it's really China. Some of the products are moving to China through Taiwan. We see that the Gambia is producing approximately 60,000 tons of fish every year. And the NAS has put a target of reaching 75,000 tons by 2025. And considering the trajectory, I think that's clearly doable. However, I mean, it can only be done if sustainable practices are in place and pollution and environment is not eroded. Some of the strengths of the fishery sector, again, location, we see location coming up again and again. So the Gambia is located in a highly productive upwelling zone, rich in diverse fish species. We know that there are an abundance of different types of fish resources, both pelagic and demersal fish. The proximity to major trading partners, the EU and Africa, and I would even add the United States and North America, because being in West Africa puts you pretty close to the North American markets compared to some of your other competitors in Africa. We see again the River Gambia as another important resource, specifically for freshwater fishing and aquaculture. As mentioned earlier, the sector contributes to food security. It creates employment and generates income and improved livelihood for thousands of people, particularly small micro businesses, women, the youth. And it is being seen by the government as an important tool for poverty reduction. We see that the fish sector is an important source of foreign exchange. And there's an abundant supply of fish in high demand, particularly when we went to some of the fish factories, we saw that they have soulfish, which is in high demand in the European market. And of course, soulfish is a very expensive fish. So that's good, that's a premium product. Fisheries regarded as a priority investment area as well. And we see there's some things happening in terms of the markets being developed, the fishery depots being developed, but there's still more that needs to be done. Very importantly, the Gambia is a part of major fisheries protocol, particularly with the European Union as well. So that makes market access much easier for the fisheries sector. We also see that the waters off the coast of the Gambia are comparatively cleaner than other regions. So promoting clean, safe fish, because we know the whole issue of pollution in the waters, mercury being found in fish is a big issue. So the Gambia has an advantage in that regard. We see that more than half of the fish processors are certified for the EU market. And we're also very pleased to see that some of those that are certified are actually working with some of the smaller players so that they can get market access through them. So as a matter of fact, that is one of the big things that we saw, not only in fisheries, but in many of the other sectors as well. This whole idea of co-opetition or people working together. They're competing, but they're also working with each other to support one another. We see it in cashew, in groundnuts, in horticulture as well, and we see it here in the fisheries sector. So that's a commendable point for the Gambia. Some of the key issues and constraints is that there's inadequate infrastructure for fish handling and processing. And I mean, if you go to the fish market, you see the handling conditions are not necessarily up to standard, but some of the companies that we visited, we see that they have a very, very high standard environment from the private sector perspective, but more could be done in terms of support from the government and building infrastructure to support handling and processing. We see that there's inadequate technical and scientific expertise to ensure conformity with industry standards, as well as sanitary and phytosanitary measures. Again, that was mentioned earlier, the whole idea of limited access to credit and the high cost of credit is significantly limiting growth of the sector. And in the financial access to finance section in the cross-cutting issues, we deal with some of these issues as well. Poor development and organization of fisheries association. So while there's some cooperation going on, more could be done. The sector needs to stand together, to work together. Sorry?
Someone needs to be let in. Could you do that quickly?
Okay, great. Right. Yeah, so so the fishery sectors need to work together in a more coordinated and organized effort to really become more competitive, because if you're working against one another and there's poor coordination, poor collaboration, you're hurting yourself rather than helping yourself. And with an association, you can move together as one body rather than small voices speaking and lobbying for their needs. We see also another challenge is that some of the bilateral agreements do not always adequately favor the Gambia, but it boils down to a question of negotiation and looking at areas that you can actually take advantage of and making it work for you. The high cost of inputs, as was mentioned earlier, for example, the high cost of energy, electricity, and so on is another issue. One of the major points that was raised by stakeholders is the inadequate monitoring, control, and surveillance. So we see that some of the foreign vessels, for example, out of China and some of these places have been practicing what's the word? It's unsavory practices, illegal fishing that is taking place. I'm just gonna, sorry, I was getting some feedback there, right? So some illegal fishing taking place. We see that they don't respect the demarcated boundaries based on the size of the vessel. So more monitoring is definitely needed in that regard. And it's not just the monitoring and control of the suppliers, but also monitoring and control of the fish stock. Because do we know how many fish we have in the waters of Gambia? Are we monitoring the population? Are we monitoring the different species? Do we know if there are any particular species that is on the decline? And what actions do we need to take in order to mitigate against those declining fish stock as well? Again, limited access to air and sea freight. Many suppliers, they're also connecting with ports and air access and sea access out of Senegal as well. We also see a fragmented value chain, so more needs to be done to tighten that up. Weak knowledge of some of the main markets. I mean, some of the suppliers don't even understand how significant or important soulfish is, for example, and how to use it as a negotiating point. Unavailability of adequate transport storage facilities. As we know, fish has to be transported using cold storage facilities, and there's a lack of that on the ground. Poor road networks linking production centers and markets, we know that too well. Low production level. We understand that the fishery sector is mainly artisanal in nature, and many do fishing for subsistence purposes. So that is part of the challenge. Limited number of fishing ports as well. Irregular supply of electricity. This was a point mentioned earlier on. So it's affecting fisheries. I mean, especially if you're doing cold storage and your freezer stops working, I mean, that could destroy whole batches of product that being exported. And there are some opportunities that we can look at, and I'll let Dr. Poon explain that as we move along. You need to unmute yourself, Oliana.
Oh, sorry. One of the opportunities, of course, is to dissect the fish, because, you know, it's like an airplane. Different people pay different prices depending upon where they sit, how much in advance they book, and all of these things. But very similarly, there are parts of the fish that's worth more than other parts. So it's sometimes important to really look at the different sections of the fish, from the cheeks, which is the most valuable, to the part in the back, which is the upper part of the back, the lower part of the back, the middle back, and all of those things. So I think it's really important that also people who catch the fish and deal with the fish understand that. And also, if there are packaging plants available that one can fillet and package, sort of like, what's it called? You sort of get all of the air out, and you
vacuum
could,
packing.
you know, vacuum packing. So you can actually make more money from the whole fish rather than the whole thing. And of course, when you cut all of the entrails and everything out and you have all of the other pieces, you can also make fish bouillon, which means that you can cook something and add the flavor of it, because you have to reduce it. And so I think we need to understand the whole value chain of the fish itself, not just the transporters, but the fish itself, and how it can actually be much more valuable than we make it out to be.
And this is a very simple and easy way for value added.
And one of the things we also, one of the things we also found is that even local people, if you don't go and buy the fish from the market, you cannot get fresh fish. But if you vacuum pack, you can make it available fresh in supermarkets. So after work, when the market isn't available anymore, whatever, local people can actually get access to that fresh fish that they can prepare for their families. And so I think it's important for all of those reasons, not just export and regional markets, but also for the local market.
Okay. Some of the targets for the sector, we have projected a growth of 15%, which is very doable. It has been done in the past. We also have a target of 75,000 tons, up from 60,000 tons. We want to increase the budget allocation to aquaculture development to $10 million and increase the percentage of fish resources exported from 32% at the current level to 43%. And this would tie in to achieve a 15% of GDP growth. These are some of the strategies. Again, we are not going into all of them and into too much detail, but just to give you a flavor of what the strategies are. So in terms of monitoring, controls, and surveillance, we see the need to provide a few more patrol boats, provide necessary logistics for the smooth operation and maintenance of these patrol boats, to partner with sub-regional and international partners to protect our waters. So by working together, Gambia, Senegal, Guinea-Bissau can protect their coastal waters as well. Reduction of overfishing is another strategy through the creation of fishing quotas for fishing vessels. But again, monitoring will be important, because you can apply quotas, but if people don't adhere to it, then it's a complete waste of time. So monitoring and enforcement will be required. And we also need to limit the number of fishing vessels allowed to fish in the Gambian waters as well in order to control your fishing population. Another important point is to create awareness on sustainable exploitation of fisheries resources. So training, a simple thing at what Dr. Poon just explained in terms of value adding and filleting and the different parts of the fish. I mean, not everyone knows about that. So training needs to be done to actually show them how to do it, how to get it ready. And an awareness campaign also needs to be done throughout the country, like tourism, to explain the importance of tourism, to do community outreach, to sensitize people on the economic impact of fisheries on the country. And of course, engaging the local fisher folks through the traditional CAFOs and different means and so on. Another strategy is to strengthen research and development in fisheries. And to achieve this, we have to adequately train the fisheries field staff and data collectors. We also need to create a statistical database for processing, reporting, and analyzing fisheries data, and to provide tools for conducting fish market survey. As we said earlier on, data is the new oil, and if you don't have the correct data, the timely data, the relevant data, then you can't make the right decisions. Another key strategy is provision and improvement of relevant infrastructure. We mentioned earlier that as a challenge, some infrastructure are lacking. So the construction of a well-equipped fishing jetty with adequate capacity is an important point. Rehabilitation of existing infrastructure at some of the fish landing sites countrywide. So not just in one or two spots, but it has to be a systematic and countrywide approach. Also, in terms of construction of modern smokehouses, as we know, a lot of smoking is done, particularly at an artisanal level. And if we have more smokehouses, that can help. Construction of storage facilities and drying platforms countrywide, again, similar to the smoking point. Another key strategy is to strengthen and encourage the formation of fisheries association. As we see, we need to talk with one voice. We need to work together to build capacity, and even providing soft loans as well, and to encourage and incentivize people to work together and to enter the fisheries sector in a viable and meaningful way. We also need to strengthen the fishery value chain. There are other areas that we can look at, for example, oysters. Dr. Poon talked about packaging as well, vacuum packaging and so on. So that there's some areas that could be introduced, some innovative approaches that could be introduced. The use of technology is important as well. In this sector, like in tourism and in all of the sectors, technology innovation is important. Another key strategy is reducing the pollution of aquatic environments. Again, we saw that one of the strengths of the Gambia is that the coastal waters are some of the cleanest compared to many other competitors, certainly compared to other developing countries and other developed countries. So pollution, of course, will destroy that strength, and we need to actually control, monitor, and enforce through fines on people who actually are polluting and offending. And of course, we need to conduct an adequate study on the pollution and the environment. That's what that should say there. So something is missing there, right? Enhance the management of fisheries revolving fund and strengthen the loan recovery mechanism system. Again, and also we need to also look at the interest rates as well, and the section that deals with the financial access or access to finance deals with some more specific points as well. Again, improve vessel tracking standards. So one of the points that was raised, I believe, by the Deputy Permanent Secretary of the Ministry dealing with fisheries is to establish automatic identification systems or vessel monitoring systems. Another strategy is enhancing the access and availability of fishing inputs. And that is done through the provision of subsidies by the government and actually purchasing some of these fishing units and making it available at a reduced price to some of the fishers. Enhancing market access and market diversification. Again, like tourism, like some of the other sectors, there's an over-dependence on certain markets, and we really need to diversify these markets. We need to improve hygiene and sanitary conditions in terms of processing and handling. We need to standardize or post-harvest or post-fishing operations to maintain international standards as well. So those are just some of the strategies and actions in the fisheries sector. If you have any question or comments, we would welcome them now. Anyone has any comments or questions? Okay, I'm seeing Ibrima Jallo. Okay, so you need to unmute, Ibrima, to ask your question or make a comment. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm seeing. Sorry, it's echoing here. Can you? Okay, thank you very much. If you look at the whole document, it's like the issue of standardization and international standards and so on is something that is coming up in every sector. So I don't know whether it is late for now or it can still be done. I think in order not to miss out on anything, we should have a specialized section or in the cross-cutting issues to have issues of standard that can capture all the areas so broadly, because the way we are capturing in each of the sectors, along the line, we could lose sight of some of them, or it may not be coordinated. And what will happen is, if all are captured in one, some of them can be going concurrently, and it can save a lot of resources and so. But if they're all disaggregated like this, along the line, we may lose sight of some of them, or we'll have a lot of duplication of activities here and there. So thank you very much.
Okay, valid point noted.
Should it then be a cross-cutting issue to put standards and international standards? Something to think about.
Just now. There is a section, section 21.4, that deals with quality management and standards. So there's an entire section in the cross-cutting issues that addresses the standards across the board, working together with a lot of the agencies responsible for implementing standards, such as the Bureau of Standards and so on, in terms of quality management and quality standards. So it's a valid point. And we will relook it to make sure that everything is housed in that one area so that we don't miss anything.
Yes. Yeah. Can I make a comment? Mm-hmm. Can I make a comment here?
Go ahead.
Yeah, Lamin again. That's a very valid point raised by Mr. Jallo, because if you look at Gambia's trade performance, you will realize that it's deeply affected by the absence of quality infrastructure, especially when it comes to accredited laboratories and standardized, products. And in order to compete, effectively, and in the international market, we have to get, our technical standards and regulations, right. And recently, we've engaged in reviewing the Gambia's ease of doing business. From the ranking, done by the World Bank, and one of the elements, that continue to affect the Gambia's, cross-border trade is the weak infrastructure, quality infrastructure that we have in country. So, it's critically urgent, to look at investments, into those areas, or even technical assistance, to have, the accredited laboratories that will help with the testing of products. Because a big problem that exporters will face, is the time when the Standards Bureau or the Food Safety and Quality Authority will have to send, these product samples to Senegal or even to Germany to have them tested before they are being exported. So to avoid instances of this and the impact on the cost of doing business or the cost of exports, it's critically important, to have, this quality, infrastructure in country. And one way of doing this is to look at, already the existing laboratories, infrastructure that we have in country, like the Nari laboratory and then the Fisheries laboratory, and then conduct an audit of this infrastructure and see what upgrade, can be done to have them accredited at the international, level. Yes, so this is a very important point. Mr. Jallo, thanks. Yeah.
Okay, shall I go now?
Yes, Yinka, go ahead.
Yes, okay. So my comment is more around the whole issue of irregular, illegal and underreported fisheries, and the extent to which any of those issues may be addressed in some action-orientated way within the NES, as it aligns to the sector itself. So we know that IUU is still being debated at the WTO, and it's very unlikely that there will be any agreement in this area in the near future, because it's so highly contested by those countries that are considered to be the ones that, other countries point out as doing irregular or underreported fisheries. But even aside from that, we know that there are these partnership agreements between the EU and the West African countries in terms of giving the right to EU fishing vessels to be able to fish in West African coastal countries' waters. So this is a huge issue, because we know that the range of licenses that are in effect are covering most West African countries. They cover the Gambia, Mauritania, Cote d'Ivoire, and some other countries. The one for, I don't think they cover Ghana and Nigeria. But anyway, there's a list of which ones are covered. But my point is, annually, the licensing paid to the Gambia is far lower than for other countries. So for example, for the Gambia, the FT were noting that it was 600,000 that was paid to the Gambia government to fish, for EU vessels to fish in the Gambia waters. By contrast, Mauritania had 61.6 million paid under agreement to fish in Mauritanian waters. So there's a big disparity between what countries have been able to negotiate with the EU. Now, for me, this does matter because of the context of Brexit, aside from anything else. In the context of Brexit, one of the big issues that was being pushed by the Brexiters was that they didn't want the Spanish, primarily, but also the Portuguese and to a less extent the French, to be fishing in UK waters. So now when we have Brexit, a lot of those EU vessels will no longer be fishing in UK waters unless there's an expensive license in place, even though we don't know what the final Brexit deal is. My point is this: when there is an issue in EU waters around fishing, when you have stock that is already under pressure, EU vessels will fish further and further. And West Africa, of course, has, well known to be plentiful stocks and not a very well regulated or monitored sector. And this is even aside from the Chinese and the Japanese and so forth. So my question is this: is there an opportunity, even aside in the context of the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, even putting that aside, is there a possibility of looking at these agreements, these partnership agreements with the EU in terms of what's actually included in these licenses? The Gambia isn't alone in possibly having signed some agreements with small print, which very drastically undervalues the cost of the fishery resources that EU vessels are able to come into the waters and create this fishery stock today. So all the issues that we've been talking about in terms of value added, processing, of course, ensuring standards are correct and so forth for the final product, are highly relevant and should be included. I'm just saying that we have some very apparent low-hanging fruit that the Gambia government, in collaboration with discussions with her neighbors, has an opportunity to discuss and revisit partnership agreements which are not fit for purpose. But it has to be something that's done collaboratively with other neighboring countries, because otherwise what you end up is with the typical beggar thy neighbor approach to these licenses. So I just wanted to flag that as an issue under this sector.
Excellent. Excellent point.
Sorry.
Kevin, did you let in someone?
Yes.
Okay.
May I?
Sure.
Who's speaking?
Yes. May I?
Yes, yes, who's speaking? We don't.
Yes, go ahead, Amadou.
Amadou, okay.
Yeah.
Cannot hear anything.
I'm not hearing anything.
No. Is there someone that? Oh.
Maybe he lost audio, I don't know.
Yeah, maybe he lost audio. Okay.
I'm still seeing him on, but I'm not sure what's happening. Okay, well, he can always comment later on if anything. Are there any other final comments on fisheries? We see Mansata Drame is saying, many thanks, Madam Olayenka, extremely valid points been mentioned here. It's a cause that needs serious consideration. Okay, let's continue then. Right, so that brings us to the end of today's presentation. As we mentioned earlier, tomorrow we're gonna go straight into the other sectors. We're gonna be discussing light manufacturing, groundnuts, cashew, and horticulture. And we can also cover some of the cross-cutting issues as well if time permits. But again, many of them would have been mentioned and discussed throughout the sectors, such as the use of technology, access to finance, market access, standards, and so on. They've been presented to us in many different ways throughout the sectors themselves. Okay, so what we need you to do now, I don't know if there's anything else, Dr. Poon, that you wanted to say. You need to unmute yourself, Oliana.
After this, we will stay on a few minutes to discuss tomorrow with Gaipa and Yinka and us.
Okay, that's fine, no problem.
Okay,
right,
so
what we need you to do, okay, there's a comment from Bakari Saidikan saying that the financial system for the fishery sector is more diversified, say, in Senegal than in the Gambia. Contrary to Senegal, where there is a specific fund called the Economic Promotion Fund, specifically for the fishing sector, with advantageous conditions such as interest allowance, hedge funds, and contribution funds, the Gambian plant owners are still subject to the existing financial market. Investment credits are minimal and commercial interest rates are very high. Yes, we know that. Very good, make that point. Since access to finance is a major challenge, I reckon a model like our neighbors can be adapted, or we come up with our own modalities to help a sector that we have or can be considered as a comparative advantage. That's a very valid point, Bakari, and we will look at and take it into consideration. The financial access to finance sector looks at some mechanisms that can help. There's some suggestions in that regard, but I think this is something that could be incorporated into that as well. So thank you very much for making that comment. Okay, great. So, right. So what we want to hear from you now. What have been your experience in today's session? We would like to get some feedback. How would you rate this session today, and how can we improve tomorrow? So in your chat, just go to your chat and just type in whether you think it was excellent, very good, good, fair, or poor, and this will give us some feedback. And if you have any specific things, you can share it here or in the WhatsApp group on how we can improve tomorrow's session. So we want to hear from you.
So someone can give a suggestion of what they think the session was, and obviously it cannot be the organizers. So it has to be the participants choosing one of these 5 options. Yeah, that would be great. Thanks.
Well, is either everyone asleep or they're afraid to comment?
No, well, one comment came in already.
I'm not seeing it.
It was sent privately, but you can put the comments to everyone.
Yeah, make sure it's to everyone, yes. Okay, I'm seeing excellent, 1 excellent, so that's a good start. Okay, I have Hadi Sise wants to say something, so I'm just gonna allow you, go ahead. Hadi Sise, you need to unmute.
Hello.
Yes, go ahead, go ahead.
It's not Hadi, it's Amadou. I'm using her laptop because
okay, right. Okay,
had an issue when I started talking. Yeah, so I firstly started by supporting the view of the Commonwealth rep there about the EPAs and what to do with them. I think that is a very good suggestion, and see how it can add value to our economy, and against the background of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. Remember, these are different frameworks that would need to be looked at moving forward. With regards to the other comment on quality, I think it was also a very brilliant one. It's definitely a cross-cutting issue. I mean, as Lamin Gay said, very, very important, very key for the development of all these sectors. However, it's also good to note that the approach is always sectoral in this case, because the standards are so different. They're not the same. But it's good to at least have it as a cross-cutting issue that can be looked at for each of the sectors or industries. I think in a similar fashion, ICT, I don't know how it has been looked at, but for me, ICT is not for tourism. ICT actually can even add maybe greater value if we can harness its potential in agriculture, which we haven't done yet. Very, very minimal. And as well as the other sectors. So I am seeing it here, especially in the context of COVID-19, to be a topmost priority for all the sectors. So why not consider ICT also as a vital cross-cutting issue? I think the same with environment and climate change. So probably the crisis response unit or fund that we were talking about here could also be something that the environment is here to stay. COVID-19 is an environmental issue. Climate change is here. It has gone under the carpet for now, but I think even by the time we emerge from COVID, we'll be talking of even more serious issues about climate change. So this is also another cross-cutting one that very key for a country like the Gambia, which is reliant on natural resources for all the sectors that have been highlighted here. So I don't see anything that can be more cross-cutting and more important than environment and climate change. Finally, I think with respect to the sectors that have been chosen, I think they're chosen right, all of them. However, I miss to see re-export trade, a very, very important sector for the Gambia. It used to be so important that, so maybe 15, 20 years ago, that it used to occupy, I think, up to nearly 30%, 20 or 30% of GDP. It was very significant, and I think we are slowly getting back into it because it's a very good opportunity, although with more obstacles. So I don't know where it has gone, but I think re-export trade should be highlighted as one of the very important issues, just like the Gambia's Africa Continental Free Trade Area strategy highlighted it. So we are thinking here of synergies between the various frameworks we have. So I think it would be important to also not miss export trade. Thank you.
Okay, great. Those were some valid points. Thank you very much. Just to address a couple of the issues, we agree totally that the environment is becoming more and more important, and it is a cross-cutting issue for all of the sectors. We also agree that ICT is a cross-cutting issue, and we have addressed ICT as a cross-cutting issue within the NES. There's a section that is solely dedicated to ICT. So those were some very, very, very valid points moving forward. The issue with the re-export, I think there was a decision not to include it as one of the priority sector from the beginning in terms of discussions with the stakeholders, and that many of the issues in terms of the cross-cutting issues will actually impact on the re-exported, whether it's ICT, whether it's market access, whether it's access to finance. All of those cross-cutting issues will actually support the re-export sector as well.
Sorry, may I ask, what was the main reason that you remember why the re-export trade was not agreed to be included? Do you remember?
I think one of the points that was raised was the fact that the other cross-cutting issues will actually help support it, and that it may not necessarily be a specific sector that we want to move forward. I mean, I can go through the notes again, but I remember a decision was made not to include it.
Yes, I only hope it was not political. Sorry to mention that, but I think
it was.
Yeah, I hope, and you know, we are technicians. We are not part of the politics, although it's important, but I think for the interests of our country.
Oops, sorry, I muted you by mistake, sorry. Sorry about
Hello.
that. Go ahead. Yes.
Oh, so yeah, I don't even remember where I stopped. I didn't realize that I was muted.
You only lost about 2 seconds.
Yeah, you said in the interest of our country.
Yes, I was saying it's so vital for the interests of our country, and all top economists know about this. So why should it be put on the side? For the private sector, some of us who are in the private sector, not within the government, we feel that this is a very, very important area and sector. It is a sector. It used to be a sector. And if we fragment it among the different industries, I think it's going to lose its focus. It's not going to be addressed properly. So I challenge that. Unless some very valid reasons are brought forward, I think it should be maintained there as a very, very vital sector. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments, and we will rediscuss it and relook it. Okay, good. I see some comments coming in. I think we have 10 comments so far in terms of the feedback on the workshop. So we have 2, 4, 6. Oh, counting wrong. Sorry, 1, 2, 3.
I count 12, is it?
6. So we have 7 excellent out of a total of 11 people. And we have 3 very good and 1 good. So at least we know we're doing something right, and we will hopefully improve even more tomorrow. Lamin, do you want to give the final closing remarks? You need to unmute yourself, Lamin.
All right. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Dr. Poon, Dr. Olayinka from the Commonwealth Secretariat, and thank you, everyone, all the stakeholders for the active participation. Over the first day of the validation process of the National Export Strategy document. I'm glad that the engagements have been quite, enriching, and there's a lot of, commitment demonstrated from all the stakeholders. And I believe with the comments made, so far, we're definitely hopeful that we will have a very well enhanced NES, document, and that will definitely address all the challenges and the concerns that we have been embattled with, as a country, with a view to definitely enhance our performance as far as international trade is concerned. And I will continue to urge everyone in this room and outside of this room connected to this platform to further take a closer look, at the document. Conduct a more thorough review of the document. Take note of comments that they may have, questions, and bring them on board tomorrow. To help, in the effort towards, getting a well-drafted, document. And I was also say that the turnout today wasn't very bad. We had at the beginning about 31 participants, and as of now, I think we have 28 participants. And a lot of other stakeholders, wanted to connect, but due to, internet limitations, they were not able to connect. We hope that the connections, will be better tomorrow, and therefore hope to have, an increased number of participants. Once again, I thank you all, and would want to say that we should convert tomorrow by 9 a.m., in the interest of time. So at least we should be able to cover, the remaining ground that we have to cover towards the, final, validation of the document. So I thank you all for your participation and look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yinka, Lamin, and Dr. Poon, you will remain on, or you want to chat after, or what?
Yes, no, let's remain and chat.
Okay.
Yes.
I think one of the interesting things I think we should do tomorrow is...
Let's wait for people to come out before we continue.
No, that's fine. I think one of the interesting things we should do tomorrow, Kevin, to start off the other sectors with is a quick review of the cross-cutting issues, a quick presentation on the cross-cutting issues before we get into the sectoral strategies and so. I think it will be helpful.
Right, makes sense.
So that, it's, because a lot of people are thinking it's not covered,
Right.
And then we could beef it up and share it and see what else we need to look at.
So are we waiting for the closing of this meeting? Shall we all disconnect and then log back in? Or
I think I will do that, yes. I'll close off the meeting and then we click back the same link.
Yes.
Right?
That's
okay, great.
Okay, thank you all. Speak
all right.
soon.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. All the best.
Okay, bye.
All right, how do I end this now? End meeting, right.
Or leave.